Okay. So yeah, we're gonna get this show on the road. Right now, we only have Mark, Amy, and Simon House, and usually we've been getting about 20, 25 people. So we'll kind of get started here and see who crawls in. Claudia is the person from ACFN who I usually work with to make this happen. She'll be jumping on, but she's going to be a few minutes late. And so again, here we go. So this is about culture and connection, Indigenous in recovery. It's a little mini summit that we've been doing now for the 4 months. This is the fourth month. Looks like we might be doing another 8 months worth. So we'll have news for you guys on that later. The purpose to this is to help individuals, families, organizations, chief and councils, band administration to better understand addiction and the spiritual malady that drives the addiction and all self-destructive behaviors. So I'm a recovery activist, advocate. I work with a lot of people in recovery, and my message is this isn't so much about the addiction of substance, whether it be drugs or alcohol. It's way more about the spiritual malady. Malady means sickness. And unless we really look at those things and change how we look at ourselves and life and other people, the chances are is that we will always reach for a drink or a drug. And so I guess one of the things that has made me people reach out to me like Claudia did is, my name's getting out there as being an Indigenous man and kind of dedicating my life to helping serve our people and having the knowledge behind me as far as understanding the disease. And I say dis-ease, right? It's a disease of our spirit. And so yeah, I get to pick the speakers, and typically I pick speakers that understand that, and not always though. And we respect all paths to recovery. It's not one shoe fits all. It's whatever you want, whatever path you want, but understanding it's pretty important to follow a path. The event philosophy is adhering to one person, one family, one community at a time. And the way that I look at it is if you, as the individual who struggles with substance abuse, you can get well, you can affect your family, and your family can affect the community. And then as our communities get well, we can affect the broader Canada. And so it all starts with us, right? The one person, and my own experience in my own life really reflects that. And, I know, our speakers here, they also reflect that as they got well, the family starts getting well. As addiction is a family disease. So Billwardlife is the name of my organization. I also am the host of a podcast called the UDR Cast. It's a recovery podcast that streams on all social media platforms, Spotify, YouTube. You can find me on YouTube at Billward Life or on any other platform at the UDR Cast. And I provide tailored workshops, speaking engagements, and resources to First Nations communities. Um, our approach is we inspire, educate individuals, families, and organizations. And that's huge, right? Inspiring people to want to change. And why I think inspiration is so important is because without being inspired by somebody, most people won't move. And why I think it's important to understand the illness is because as you understand the illness, which is the problem, which is the spiritual sickness, then you understand what's really going on. Because picking up a drink and a drug isn't the problem, and you can't stop anyway if you're a real addict or alcoholic. But once you understand that's actually the solution that doesn't work anymore, and you hear other people talk about that, it inspires you to maybe take that step. So we inspire individuals, families, and organizations to learn and grow and do this in a good way. To persevere, strengthen Indigenous culture, foster resilience and harmony through modern approaches, cultural practices, and interactive teaching. So, as a First Nations man myself, who actually was so disconnected from my culture for most of my life, I didn't know one Indigenous person until I was 43 years old. And now I know way too many. Um, but it's just been a it's been a gift in my life to get connected with my roots and where I came from and the drumming and the singing and the sun dancing and going to powwows and starting to learn the language and all these kind of things are so important to me today. And a big reason why I was an addict was I was disconnected from those parts of me, but I didn't know it. And then as I kind of came into recovery and I started learning and looking within myself at my own spiritual malady, I could see the things that were wrong, that were blocking me, that were symptoms of my illness. And one of them was I couldn't see who I really was. And a huge part of me is Indigenous. So once I connected with that, it was a big part of my growth in the right way. Our mission is to empower individuals, families, and communities to embrace the courage, truth, and self-awareness. By sharing personal stories of struggle and growth, we inspire others to pursue healing, harmony, and authenticity. True transformation lies within. It requires a deep desire and commitment to do the necessary work. So the transformation lies within. Most addicts and alcoholics will change everything on the outside numerous times. Boyfriends, girlfriends, places where they live, places where they work. It's always a chase to change something on the outside. But true transformation has to happen within. And it really does require a deep desire and commitment to do this necessary work because it's not easy. That's why these events are so important because you see person after person after person who is just like you or just like me, and they've actually taken the responsibility for their illness and their own healing, and you don't have to do it alone. And that's the one big thing in recovery that you learn is you don't do it alone, you can't do it alone. And so, it helps with the commitment to know that other people have done it. And as we walk together in recovery, when it gets hard, we help lift each other up. And, the recovery community is a beautiful thing. And sometimes I know in the nations, the recovery, it's difficult in the nations to recover because some of the recovery community either isn't there yet and it's still being built, or um, some of the recovery maybe isn't the best. And so you see somebody sober, but they're still miserable. We call that a dry drunk. So we try to see emotional sobriety is really the key here. Through emotional sobriety, sobriety of substance will always be the result. So we focus on emotional sobriety, emotional recovery. So the event itinerary. So from now till 1:10, which is coming right up here, I do an overview of the event purpose and goals, and I introduce the speakers. So the speakers that we have today are the first speaker will be 12:15 to 12:35. It'll be Rae-Dawn Whitney. Rae-Dawn is from Tsuut'ina Nation. I know her very well. She's an amazing woman, and I'm not going to take too much away from her story. I'll let her tell it. But what I can say about her is I took a trip with her a couple years ago and didn't really know much of her story. And then because she looks like she's together, and then when she tells you her story, it's just like, holy shit, that's for real. Like it's the craziest stuff. She probably won't get into all of it today, but it's pretty wild how recovery transforms you because I couldn't see her being like that, but she was. So at 12:45 to 1:05-ish, we did have Jack Crook scheduled in, but he cannot make it today. He had to participate in ceremony, and so ceremony comes first for a lot of us. So Jack had to go get crutches for the Sundance that they're putting on down here in Tsuut'ina this year. And so we have our beautiful Taylor D, who's in the center of my screen. She's actually online up in Edmonton. She's going to fill that spot. And I know Taylor very well. I met her probably about 6 years ago. And, she bounced around a little bit to begin with, but she finally got her footing and she's done very well for many years now. and she's in the helping field, and she just really tries to be a spearhead for our creator and help our people. She's got a deep passion to help our people, and I'm so appreciative for of her and what she does, and I'm appreciative of her today for joining us and filling that gap. So thank you, Taylor. About 110 to 120 cultural presentation, song and meaning. So I will probably fill that slot with a song, or if anyone online has a song and you want to share a song and maybe it has a little story behind it, you can hit me up on the chat and we can go back and forth. And, I would love to let somebody from the Zoom screen share a song or a little teaching or whatever it is that you might want to share. And if not, that's cool. I can handle that too. At 125 to 145-ish, speaker number three, Brittany Alysha Tilly, who I've just gotten to know little by little in the last few months. A very, very nice, awesome lady. She's from the West Coast. Her roots are from the West Coast, and she's reconnecting with her culture, kind of similar to my story in a way. Um, and the Salish natives are quite different traditionally than ours. And so I know she's pursuing getting to know, her background a lot, and she's been in recovery, I think sober 6 years or so. I'll let her clarify that when she gets up. But yeah, she's kicking ass. She's kicking life's ass right now, and really happy to have her here. And I think this might be one of her first speaker engagements live. And then last, 150 to 205, I will speak on the malady or a topic, and I'll figure that out as we go. I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about, but it will probably be based on the spiritual malady. And at 210 to 230-ish, our closing speaker is AJ Starlight. He's from out here in Tsuut'ina Nation. Um, I also have known AJ for probably 3 or 4 years now, and he's just an amazing human being who loves to help people. He and Rae-Dawn actually work together out at Tsuut'ina, and I do a little bit of contracting work out there with Tsuut'ina too. So I get to work with both of these beautiful humans. And, I haven't seen too many men have more of a passion to help serve, and almost to the point where his boss has to say, okay, quit helping people and go take a break. Like, it's pretty crazy how much he just wants to help people. And, I guess there could be many other things wrong with him other than that, right? So that's good. After each speaker, we will have a question and answer period. So if anyone on the screen wants to ask any questions or have any comments for the speakers, you're more than welcome to just either put up your hand if you want to use the hand feature, or you can just unmute and say, "Hey, can I share something?" And then you can definitely share what you want to share and ask a question, whatever it might be, or give thanks to the speaker for the message. Um, and if nobody does do that, then I'll prompt them with some questions and kind of ask them, how they got there. And then right at the end, 2:45, 3 o'clock area, I will ask Claudia to get on and share some closing words, as she is the organizer on the Acfn end. And her and I have been building a good relationship, and another lady with a passion to help serve her community. And yeah, we'll see what she has to say today. And there's a chance that we may sing a song at the end, but there's also a chance that we won't. I may just close it out with a prayer. So, without any further ado, we will get this going, and I will start it with a prayer while Rae-Dawn Whitney gets situated in the speaker room. So, how we work it here is I have all the speakers in the house here. So, I have my podcast studio that you see here. I have another big neon sign here, and this one behind me. I have this sound wall. I have this wall that's a soundproof wall and it's also a nice looking wall. And then I have all these curtains and these bars hanging, and I basically turned half my apartment into a podcast studio. And so what I'm self-contained in here, but I have another bedroom that I've turned into like a speaker room and a store. And so all my merchandise and my printer and some other things are in there, but I also have a desk with another computer. And so that's where the speakers go. But on the other side of the curtain, which you guys can't see, is another computer with another TV screen. And then the guests that are in the house, they get to watch everyone on a big screen and eat all the food and drink drinks. And so it's kind of good. We just kind of have like a little sober party, little sober party here while we're doing this. So, this isn't going to be perfect. It's never perfect, but we'll do the best we can. And I really want to thank everybody for coming out and supporting. And if you want to share the post with anybody this afternoon while we're getting going here, feel free. It's on my Facebook feed. And you can just share it. And let's get some more people on here. So, our first speaker, number one speaker, Rae-Dawn Whitney. So, a good friend of mine, she's probably one of my best female friends that I have in the world. And when I see Rae-Dawn, doesn't matter where, like, my heart is just like lit up. Like, I just really love this woman for many reasons because she's so authentic. She loves to serve. She really looks at herself in a critical way, but in the way where she can work on herself and try to be the best that she can be. She she's a master at handling conflict, and she's a mother of two boys. And you know, I know her as a good friend too, and some of the stories of her boys like have made me laugh too. And but she just rolls with the punches of life. Like, addiction in our communities runs very deep, eh? And I know Rae-Dawn's been surrounded by it her whole life. And people in her community, family members, and these kind of things. And it's really funny because she'll be just telling me a story, and it's just like some crazy story, and she's just like do 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 do, and I'm just sitting there thinking like your life is so hilarious, but because it's just like that, she doesn't even notice, right? But we get really good laughs, and you gotta laugh at this disease too, man, because if you don't, it'll kill you on the inside. So anyway, Rae-Dawn, I love you. Why don't you take it away and tell people what it was like and what happened and what it's like today? And thanks for coming.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for introducing me and allowing me to share some of my story here. And I guess we'll just start from the beginning, like what it was like and kind of, where my addiction started. And, I was always kind of surrounded by this disease growing up. Both my parents were alcoholics, and my mom, I dealt with a lot of trauma at a young age. So I dealt with, abandonment. Like my mom, she left when I was very young, domestic violence. My dad raised me, my dad and my stepmom. So he did the very best, he could. I love my dad and my mom very much. And, growing up, we kind of, for myself, like I remember just bouncing around. Was never really stable. I remember living with, my grannies. I remember living with my aunties. I was just kind of like living in Invermere. I was born there, pretty much raised there and in Calgary. So, I was just always kind of moving around. And I never really understood why. And, that kind of just always created a sense of insecurity for, myself and my living situation. So, yeah, like growing up, I lived in Invermere, and when I was about um 13 years old, I had gone through so much trauma in regards to sexual abuse. And that's kind of where my story really started. And I think it does for a lot of our Indigenous people, especially when there is like that trauma with sexual abuse. And I was about 13 years old and, I had gone through a series of serious assaults at the hands of my best friend's dad. And during that time, I was in school and I just remember just feeling so broken, so lost, and I didn't tell anybody. And I think that that part of feeling so alone and not being able to really tell anybody, what had happened to me, what I was going through. And, this abuse went on for the course of about 18 months. So, during that whole time, it was happening. Like I was still going to school. I was still, trying to numb the pain and, I just convinced myself like this wasn't happening to me. And so really that just created, this whole um mask for myself until I tried to put on a happy face, but it just got to the point where everybody around me kind of knew something was wrong, and that included like my teachers at school. And I would go to school and I would drink to blackout. I was always skipping. I just kind of became like this problem child, or like this high risk youth, I guess. That wasn't really, something was wrong. And I remember they kept calling me in and, sitting me down. And I did want to tell them what happened, but I couldn't. And so that was really hard for me. Like that went on for about 2 years. And I ended up moving out of my dad's house and dropping out of school in like grade 9. And I went to go live with a boyfriend of mine. And I just remember um, I got really drunk one night and I blacked out and I disclosed what happened to me to him. And then in the morning, he let me know. He's like, either, you tell somebody or like I'm gonna go to the cops. And so, like, I felt like, my whole world was kind of just falling apart. Like, that's what it felt like. I felt like there was so much shame, there was so much uncertainty, so much unknown. And, like, I didn't want to deal with that part of my life. But, like, I didn't know that that's what I needed to deal with in order to heal and move forward. So, at about 16 years old, I ended up charging that man. I went to the police and ended up charging him. And, over the course of about 4 years, going through the courts and everything like that, he was found guilty. And during that time, like, I didn't know what trauma was. I didn't know what I was going through. Like I still felt all of those really, really feelings that like I hated myself. Like I had no connection, to a higher power. I didn't have a connection to self. Like everything that I was doing was pretty much just like self-medicating. And, I turned to drugs at a really early age. So I was doing cocaine, from the time I was about 13 and continuing on. And, what really kind of changed and helped me was my son. So I ended up getting pregnant when I was 18 years old. And I had my first son, and he really, at that point in my life, I was like, okay, like I need to go back to school, like I can do this. Like I was kind of in, my first rock bottom, but also able trying to get out of it, because, my son was born. So I went back to school and I was able to complete most of my schooling for my grade 12, and I ended up, moving out. We had our own place, and shortly after he was born, like I I was sober for that whole time, and then, all of those feelings of using just, really got so strong for me. And, it only took that one drink, and I felt like I was just back into that addiction. But at the time, I didn't understand addiction. Like I didn't know what recovery was. I really didn't know what addiction was. All I knew is like when I started drinking, like I really couldn't stop. When I started doing drugs, I really couldn't stop. So I was very much like a binge drinker and user. I would use, for weeks, sometimes even longer at a time. And at that time, my son would go stay with my dad. And so I was very much starting to be inconsistent in his life and kind of, all of those issues that I had with abandonment, like, I was, putting that on my son. And I knew that. And but I didn't know why. Like really, trying to understand trauma while you're young and while you're in it is just like it's a foreign it's all foreign. Like you just don't know why you are the way you are or how you ended up like this. And it wasn't um until, I was pregnant with my second son and I had been bouncing around too at that time. So I moved out, of my dad's and I moved away from Invermere. I ended up in Vancouver and I ended up in Cranbrook and, I just ended up bouncing around with my kids still, but, also trying to maintain, um, my sobriety and maintain my addiction. So, the drug use turned into smoking crack. I would drink, but like I was still able to, take care of my kids and still able to have them in my life and, have a roof over our heads. But at that time, the people who I was with, like I was in a domestic violence relationship. So a lot of the time, I was getting abused physically by the people in my life. And so I always kind of ended up, going back to my dad's, going back to Invermere and, rock bottom again and starting from scratch and, just in and out of that cycle of like domestic violence. And then um, it was about 2015, our reserve got a pretty big per capita distribution, and I ended up getting into meth. And so once I started doing that drug, like that was one of the drugs where I really couldn't get a handle on it. Like there was no being able to maintain my life, let alone like, raising kids. And I ended up not being in my kids' life for almost about 9 months while I was on a like a meth binge. And during that time, at the very end of my rock bottom at that time, which was in 2015, I reached out to one of my mentors who I had a connection with when I was a teenager, and his name is Robert Firth. And he told me, he said, you should go check out AA, like go to a meeting, and he said, and get yourself into treatment. And he said, I know there's a treatment center, Poundmaker's Lodge. He said you should apply there. So of course, like I was just so desperate to change and to get help again. My kids were always like the driving force behind me trying to get better. I decided to go to treatment and that was the first treatment center I went to. And like this is how like I know like recovery, it's such a process because at that time, like my first treatment center, like I was just learning about like what recovery was and like by the time I left that treatment center, like I left with a boyfriend, like I didn't really get the grasp of, what this addiction was. And so after that, like I was relapsing and I was in and out of AA, I was in and out of NA. It took me about like 3 years of relapsing before I even got sober to get sober, and one of my last big relapses was when so as I moved out to Edmonton after I had went to Poundmakers, I thought, oh, this is great. Like I'll start a new life here. I have friends here in recovery. Don't really have any family out there. And then I ended up coming back to Sutana on one of my weeks off of school, and I had about 5 months sobriety at that time. And I ended up, coming to visit my sister. And unfortunately, my sister had passed away due to drugs and alcohol herself. And the situation that happened was I ended up finding her, like me and my brother and my two kids. So that really broke me. And at that time, I was just like, I wasn't I didn't fall off right away, like I tried my hardest to stay, to stay sober. And it was about, I went back to Edmonton and, like I was so grief-stricken and like very traumatized. And, about a month into my grief, I ended up falling off again. And, I got into meth again. And it started kind of slow. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna, take it easy. But, within about 5 months, my whole life just like burned down. I ended up getting my kids apprehended. I ended up getting charged. I got 5 federal charges, 25 provincial charges, and I was looking at 11 years in the pen. That's what they wanted if I was to be found guilty of these charges. So within that time of like being in that system, that criminal justice system, it was really, really tough. I ended up, going to Edmonton remand for a while because I couldn't keep my court dates because they had moved me back to my reserve. They told me I had to go on house arrest in Sutana. I wasn't allowed back in Edmonton. Um, so that was really hard for me. So, but then I had to go to court every month in Edmonton. So that was like a huge barrier for me. And I ended up, breaching. So I went to jail, transferred me out to a different jail in Fort Saskatchewan. And then finally I got out on bail. And during that time, even when I was out on bail and on house arrest, like I was still using, I was still drinking, and like I was scared. I thought I was going to be going to the pen, and I was just terrified. Like I wasn't able to think about, trying to get my life together because, I wasn't allowed to leave my house, and it was the same. I was living in the same house that, I had found my late sister in. So like all the trauma that was there like was just keeping me so sick. And I ended up not being able to go to treatment. They wouldn't allow me in treatment. They said I was too violent or my charges were too violent. I wasn't allowed to go to AA because my probation officer told me that, it's just he didn't really trust me. Like it was more of a way he thought for me to go to town and pick up. So I really wasn't allowed to do anything. So all I did was what I knew best, and that was, to continue using. It wasn't until um, my charges, I ended up, half my charges ended up getting stayed and the other half ended up getting dropped. And so I had no charges on my, like in my life anymore. And I was about 10 days after I had found out that news, I was like, okay, like right now, like I am the only person like holding me back. And I just had that like aha moment of like, I need to get my kids back. And I just remember I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but like I'm just gonna, this is what I have to do. And so I had asked my auntie and my uncle if I could stay there for 5 days. And at that time, like none of your family trusts you at this point. Like you're lucky to even go near some, your family's house. But they said yes, like if you say you're gonna detox, then yes, you can stay here. So that's like where my journey kind of started. And I ended up staying at their house. And in my early detox, I really didn't have any tools or resources, but like I knew that I needed to connect with something so that I wouldn't leave that house because every single hour, every single minute, I just wanted to get up and go use. So my auntie, or I don't know how there ended up being like a smudge there, like sage. I ended up having this big bundle of sage, and like every time I wanted to leave, I would just light it and I would just like say to myself on repeat, like, don't leave, don't leave, don't leave. And that really, really helped me. So like all day, like the house pretty much like smelled like sage because I was just burning it constantly for like 3 weeks straight. And then finally, I had went to one of our income support managers and I was trying to get on income support and he said, "Why don't you attend this day program?" And then I was like, "Okay, well, I'll attend it so that I can get my check kind of." And I didn't really know what it was and it was our day program, our community day program on the reserve. So that's kind of like where my journey started as far as programming. And so I had entered into a 12-week day program, and I completed that. And I had seen a couple of the mentors that I have now, like facilitating. And early on, I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, man, like I can do that. Like I want to be a facilitator. Like I want to help people. And it was about 2 months in where I really kind of started like manifesting, to help people. And even quite early on too, I was always like manifesting, getting my kids back or getting a house. Like I didn't have a vehicle, I didn't have my kids back, but I ended up, getting those things just from I don't know what it was, but I know early on, like within 3 months, I had my kids. I had my own place, and I was able to get them back, and I just felt like every step of the way in my recovery, like there was just good things were happening to me, and I was just so grateful that opportunities and were presenting themselves, and like I was like moving forward. And it wasn't about until I was about 6 months sober. Um, I started to really try to find out who I was. At that point, like I had been bouncing around my whole life. And the last place I actually wanted to be was, in Sutana because, I was always back and forth. Like I had hurt a lot of people. I had, gave myself a really bad name and like I always felt like I didn't really belong, and so I didn't really have roots there up until then, until I started building those roots. And I remember there was a, a name giving ceremony, and so that was kind of like a really big piece of my recovery was getting my Indian name. And once I got my Indian name, I felt more whole. Like I felt like I was able to pray about, what that Indian name meant to me. And soon, like, ceremonies started presenting themselves, mentors started presenting themselves. There was just people coming into my life that were helping me with my journey into connecting into my culture. And so I thought that was pretty amazing. And also I did EMDR therapy, which was another one of the tools that I think really helped me transform. So it was trauma therapy. And after every session after I did my EMDR, I joined a parent group that did sewing and like we made regalias, we sewed, we had our children like running around, and like it was like so healing to be in the room with like a bunch of ladies, who were just filling your cup, because after you do the EMDR therapy, you feel a little bit empty. So it's up to you to fill your cup with all those positive things. So I just, made sure that I had that community support where, all of that stuff was helping me heal, and I knew it was helping me heal. Um, so yeah, I mean, after that, I graduated into a Good Workers program, which was an employment program, and then I ended up doing really well, and I went to a certificate program through Riel Institute, and then after Riel Institute, I did my practicum at the lodge again, where I started my journey, and from there, I just, I started realizing that like lots of people were reaching out to me for help. They were really connecting with me. Like I think I had like 15 people like within the first couple months who, I was just helping in recovery or helping in while they were in harm reduction and addiction. And so like that connection to people came so natural. And I think, that was seen in like some of my mentors, which I know Jody was on here earlier, but she's, been one of my mentors and has helped me through my career and, helped me work my way up. So I ended up going into a program called the Wraparound Program where we did a lot of like crisis work and then from there I ended up transferring to Child and Family Services. And right now, I am a post-majority supervisor for the youth who are transitioning out of Child and Family Services care into young adults. So I work with a team of amazing people, and all we do is help people on a daily basis. And I'm very passionate about what I do. And yeah, like I feel like everything that has brought me here to this point has really been like that connection to creator, like connection to self, just learning about healing and trauma and continuing to heal every year, looking for, different ways and different tools on how to, further my healing and my recovery. So yeah, I'm just looking at the time and I'm like, I feel like I had to really cram that story in, and there's probably so many other things that I missed. But I guess I'll end it there, and I just wanted to say thank you. And if anyone has any questions, yeah, let me know.
What do you think you missed? Carry on with whatever you think you might have missed.
Well, I mean, I guess I didn't really talk too much about, the cultural aspect of it. And that was a big piece, So really trying to connect with myself in a cultural way was a lot harder for me because I didn't grow up, with a cultural background at all. My upbringing was the Catholic Church. And so I had, I was very confused like growing up. I went to a Catholic school at a few points and I never did well there. And so yeah, I always knew like there was something more than what I was being taught or what I knew about, a higher power. And so when I did end up, getting more in touch with my culture and myself, like I ended up being invited to a Sundance, and that was one of the things that I had never experienced, and being a part of that ceremony like really really did change my life um in ways that like I can't even really explain. Like I remember going there and feeling so whole. Like I was definitely given, a new insight into myself and into our culture, and to be able to allow my kids, to heal in that way, and to be able to be a part of the sweat lodges and everything like that has been really really amazing, to my healing. And I'm always learning too. Like I just joined Gunaha classes, so we have like online classes for Sutana language. So I need to like I'm still reconnecting. I'm still learning. Like there's so much things that like I want to do and to be able to reconnect, myself culturally and my kids, right? So yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Rae-Dawn. Does anyone have any questions for Rae-Dawn or any comments? Okay. If you do, get them ready, and I'm gonna ask her some things about her recovery. So when you were like struggling, trying to figure out what recovery was and what it wasn't. What did it take for you to finally realize that you had to be all in? Because from what I heard in your story, is like you tried to piecemeal it a little bit and kind of take what you wanted and thought you could kind of still do the same things. When did it click that you had to kind of change everything?
Mm, well, I think it clicked when I had to change everything is when I realized, my whole life could have been taken from me. Like I was pretty much given a second chance of like my freedom, and I was giving a second chance of like getting my kids back. And I was like, I can't really fuck this up this time because I was so close to losing everything, right? So when I continued partying for those 10 days after I had got my charges all dropped, um, there was something, stewing inside me that was like, this is wrong. Like I kept feeling like I know I'm the only one holding myself back. Like, am I just gonna continue doing this just, for nothing, really? And like my kids are at home probably crying for me, and here I am just, I have no excuses anymore. So at that point, I had a it was funny because like I remember that day specifically I was sleeping, and there was a TV on, and a commercial came on, and I was just like I had the worst anxiety, and I was like I was thinking about getting sober, but I was like I don't know how, I don't know who to turn to. I don't even have a phone, like I don't even have anything. I have no money, like I'm basically in the middle of nowhere. Like I have nothing. I have no food, nothing. And that commercial just said like baby steps. Like those are the only two words that I heard out of the whole commercial was baby steps. And then I was like, oh shit, like, and it was like all of that anxiety, all of those thousand words, just like everything just stopped. And I was like, okay, like baby steps. I'm like, what do I got to do right now? It's like, I got to find somewhere, to get clean. Like, I got to find a safe space, and I said, just even if it's for 5 days, I just remember saying that just 5 days. Um, and then I was able to find that. And then, so I just kept doing that, like baby steps. Like, that was like my, everything that I did in recovery was because of those two words. So,
It's pretty wild. Like as you're kind of waking up in your life and you start seeing these signs in life, and one of your big signs was the commercial that said baby steps, right? And
yeah.
you really believe that's creator talking to us, right? Because the universe kind of starts working with like what we really want, and that's kind of, do you believe that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like everything in my recovery has been guided spiritually. Like I can't really explain any other way that it has been guided because like even when I was telling you when I had got my kids back, like I had no car, I had no money. I was on welfare. I was only getting 400 bucks, a month from income support. And we went to a meeting with our community day program, and I was driving by this one apartment and it said for rent. And then I was like, oh, like, look, a place is for rent. And then I wrote down the number. I was like, I'm going to call them, like, just, just for the fuck of it, just to see what happens. And then, so I called him, and then he's like, yeah, come look at it. And then, so the next day, I went to look at it, and this lady, her name was Morgan, she was a social worker. And I just started talking about, like, like I really want to get into social work, like I really want to help people, like I'm a single mom, I got two kids, and then the next day, she's like, "Well, I'm not the landlord." She's like, "But I really like you." And then the next day, the landlord called and he's like, "Yeah, you got the place." And I was like, "Oh shit!" I was like, and I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna be honest. Like, I have no money. I was like, but I could probably like if if you allow me, I could probably go through, Alberta Works to get the place, to get the damage and the rent. And he said, "Oh yeah, no problem." And he literally gave me the keys at like 3 weeks before my move in. And he's like, "Here, you could just move in. Don't worry about the paperwork. Like, I'll help you." And I was like, "What the heck?" And it was a three bedroom duplex for $900. Like it was super cheap too. And I was just shocked. I was like, everybody on the in the day program was like, "How did you do that?" I was like, "I don't know. Like, I really don't." But it was, it was just creator. Like, it was just God sent. Yeah. So things like that, like, just kept happening through my recovery.
Yeah, that's awesome. So as you kind of now are working with other people, and I remember you telling me the story that how you like moved in your career and you started working with all those people, and it was almost like intuitively that you knew what they needed, right? Because you were that person and you knew what you remembered what you needed. And is that kind of how it worked?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I didn't relate to people on a professional level, especially when I started. Like, I was just me. Like, I was helping my friends who I partied with, previous to my addiction. I was helping them, right? And they knew who I was, but they were like, "Holy shit, if you can do it, like I can do it because you were the worst, like you were the rankest." And I was like, "Yeah, I actually was." Like, so I was like, "You can definitely get sober if I can." And like, "Here, let me help you." And so it was never like, me setting professional boundaries and the language that I use, or me setting professional boundaries and like, the ethics that I use. It was like, no, like, can I come over? Like, and like, we would just hang out. Like, I'd go to that person's house, help them clean up, like do their dishes. We would just, build that relationship to the point where they were wanting to get help. So I did learn though along the way that you do need those boundaries. But I mean, like at the same time, you're still real and raw. Like that's how I still operate more so than that professional way, I guess.
I think that's a lot of what you and I bonded over is just the raw and real and just being like an addict but sober and being able to connect with them, right? Like that's how we connected, eh?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so does anyone have any questions or comments for Rae-Dawn before we shut her down?
Hi, it's Claudia. So I just want to say thank you for your story. But what really like resonated with me with what you're saying is the signs that you see, and they're inexplainable. People show up somehow that you don't know and will probably never see long after you're done that part of your journey. And it's just, yeah, that I get that. I really get that. So thank you for bringing that back up again. And every little piece is not just happenstance, it's there. It's kind of like creator's way of showing you that, he's there, he or she, whatever gender creator is, but just the creator, a higher power, a higher being, and eventually you get to where you're going and or helping out where you need to be. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claudia. So that's Claudia, our other host, who is the one who spearheaded this whole thing for Athabasca Fort Chippewa First Nation. And yeah, they're really trying to do some amazing things up there, and hopefully other nations are watching, and we can keep doing more things in all the communities because like I said at the start of the show, there's our people are struggling, man, and a lot of them don't even know what recovery is or how to find it, and that's why we're doing this, right? So anyway, Rae-Dawn, thank you so much for sharing, and that was amazing. You actually flowed that so well. Rae-Dawn's my friend too, right? And just a little while back. She's like, well, I'm not that great a speaker and all these kind of things. And she's going to have to be because she's getting asked to do these things. But she spoke recently at some forum on Sutina and she said she did really good. And you couldn't tell that she doesn't have much experience. Like you kicked ass today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Awesome.
Okay.
Well,
So
thank you.
yeah, thank you. So if you could camera out and mute out, we will get our next speaker set up, which is going to be Taylor Dumas, and she's actually online in Edmonton. So Claudia doesn't know, but Jack couldn't make it. He ended up having to go get crutches for the Sundance Arbor. And anyone who's in the ceremony life through the Sundance families knows that, that kind of comes first. So regrettably, he had to inform me that he couldn't make it on short notice, and his leader had asked him to come help do that, and I totally understand. But my good friend Taylor from Edmonton, who is a recovered addict alcoholic who is kicking life's butt also, she's graciously joined us today to share some of her experience, strength, and hope. And so, yeah, I'm going to let Taylor on camera and unmute. And come on, Taylor, good to see you. Yeah, you're good, Taylor. So you take it away, girl. And like I said, 20, 25 minutes. If you're a little under or you're a little over, no big deal. Just kind of, say what you need to say. And thank you for joining us.
Yes. Tante, no gumagumtek, kukomo tips pism, netsiga soon. Utsinia, kunukamase, kihiwina. Navia kitam skat no kakyo, anuts kisakao, napixquia, nahiwa napsis. So my name's Taylor. I am from Kihiwin Cree Nation. I have been sober since March 20th, 2020, which is actually the day that we got locked down for the COVID-19 pandemic. Not a lot of people could say that they got better in that situation. I'm definitely one of the lucky ones. Yeah, so I came into recovery in 2019. I went through Sunrise Healing Lodge in Calgary. I lasted a whopping 8 months on self-will and, being really good at being able to regurgitate big book and making people think that I knew what I was doing. Creator really humbled me in that sense. Yeah, so I'm gonna kind of start off with how it started, what happened and where I am today. Yeah, so I grew up in a pretty good household. My mom and dad didn't drink because they grew up in households where their parents drank and they didn't want to pass that on. In that sense, I am incredibly grateful, but there's still traumas that we live with as Indigenous people. As it was mentioned in the story before, there's a lot of sexual assault that happens, and it is what I believe a direct effect of the residential schools. The first time that I was molested, I was 4 years old, and then it happened again when I was 7. Both by members of my family, 2 different members. It didn't actually come out. I didn't remember it until I went through my steps. I had done a set of NA steps with this beautiful, scares me, but beautiful woman who, saw me in the rooms of AA, and this was already when I had had some clean time in, and she kind of picked me out of the crowd and she was like, "You're dead inside." And, it really got me thinking, like, maybe, yeah, because like I had gone for a few years in the program and, working with different sponsors and kind of working with some of the bigger traumas that I had faced, to meeting this woman and being able to completely trust this woman and, allowing her to show me sides of myself that I had never even looked at before, for any of those things to come out. Um, so when I was 11 years old, it kind of continued. My grandfather, my mom's dad was sexually assaulting one of my cousins. And when we found out, everybody was asking me like, did it happen to you? And like, it didn't, right? Like it was a different type of emotion because I had never seen my grandfather in that light, right? It was right around the time as well that I found out that like my dad, the dad that raised me, wasn't my biological dad. My biological dad is from Meadow Lake, decided to leave as soon as my mom got pregnant, actively tried to get my mom to abort me and left. And then, my dad, Preston, came into the picture while my mom was still pregnant. She was like 7 months pregnant, and he's like, I'll have none of that. And proceeded to take care of me and still takes care of me to this day. It was right around that time, right? So there was a lot of really intense things happening at a very young age, right? And kind of growing up away from community. Like my mom had moved us into town when I was just a baby because obviously with the results of residential school, we weren't allowed to be Indians. She did what she thought was best for us. We're all just out here winging it, and I have to show my mom the same grace that I would show myself. As I'm learning how to live, my mother's also learning how to live, and this is her first time living. So, to be able to show her that same grace that I, try really hard to show myself, it's been a really big stepping stone in our relationship. So I grew up disconnected from everybody. I had no sense of community. I knew that I was Native, but I didn't have anything, right? Like the biggest scope of what we thought we had was Bannock. And then coming into, my adult life and understanding the concepts of colonization, understanding that, Bannock is a ration meal. It's not a traditional meal, it is a ration meal. But that was the extent of my knowledge, right? That was all that I knew we had. I didn't speak the language. I didn't really have we didn't go to powwows. I didn't even know what ceremony was at that point in time in my life. As I got older, we ended up moving to St. Albert shortly after my grandfather had done those things to my cousin. And when we moved to St. Albert, I faced a lot of like bullying. It was the first time that I was ever, made fun of because I was Native, because I was poor, right? I didn't realize that we were poor. We had everything we needed. We always had food. We always had a house. My mom and dad tried really hard to provide for us everything. So it was a little bit of a shock when I, got older and I realized I'm having a conversation with my mom and I'm like, you guys are middle class, right? And she laughed at me. She's like, Taylor, what the hell makes you think we're middle class? And I'm like, well, we always had stuff, they did their best to provide for us. But living in St. Albert, it really sucked. I was kind of taken away from my cousins, my family, my friends, thrown into this environment where now I'm dirty because I'm Native. And it pushed me away from everybody. That was also when I started to drink. I was like 15 and I was hanging out with some much older kids, like high school kids. There was a kid who, had graduated but came back and he was hanging out with us. And looking back on it, I'm like, what are you doing hanging out with those children? But at the time, right, that was my sense of comfort because I didn't have anything else, right? Because my mom, didn't have the ability to be open and emotionally available with us. I couldn't talk to her about anything, right? She'd shut down, which caused me to shut down. So I never really shared anything about what was going on in my life. I never talked to anybody. I just proceeded to bury it. Um, my drinking got really heavy, and my mom thought that it was a good idea to move me back to the reserve. So I moved to the reserve. And it was funny because she's like, she won't drink over there. And then she tosses me in with a bunch of people who are already seasoned drinkers. So I fit right in. Um, and then my mom and dad ended up moving back, and we were in Bonnyville. I ended up going to school in Bonnyville. I graduated when I was 16. I just wanted to get out of there, right? I couldn't find any kind of sense of community, any sense of connection to anybody. I was so out of place. I didn't know where I belonged, right? So I would just contort myself to fit with whoever would accept me at the time. Um, and then once I graduated, I started dating this older guy, and it was kind of that pattern, right? That pattern. It was always seeking validation from an older guy. And when I actually, I apologize if I jump around a lot. It's just that these interconnect. When I did that, my second last set of steps, it came out that I had daddy issues. And I was like, but I have a dad. But it was because of that sense of abandonment that happened when I was at a really young age, right? Like I lost my grandfather, who was, my pride, like my pride and joy, right? I was so spoiled with my grandfather. Like he took care of me. Um, and then also, with my biological dad deciding to leave. So I was always seeking external validation from much older men. And I didn't really see it for what it was until I actually stopped to look at it, until somebody sat me down and said, hey, look at this. Um, when I was kind of done, I'm gonna say when I was done my rounds on the res, I went back to town. I was about 19, and I met this guy who was also 19, at a bar, and we had a really good time. A lot of our relationship was based on drinking. I didn't, I had developed a bit of an addiction to certain substances at the time, but when I started dating him, because he didn't do those things, I stopped doing those things and I was just drinking. Um, so about a year later, I got pregnant. Um, we had a baby. He was a little boy. And then 4 months later, my son passed away. And it kind of it pushed me into this pit of just wanting to die. Um, and it's taken a long time for me to come out of that pit. Like when they say long come along in the big book, like it's been a long time for me to come out of that pit. Um, it really was the catalyst in my addiction, and my drinking progressed, right? Like it went from just drinking on the weekends to drinking every day, and it was like heavy drinking. Like it was I'm only 5 feet, but my tolerance at the time was quite high. um you know when uh when all of that happened, I didn't know what to do. We had the funeral on my reserve, and I remember these elders coming up to me and telling me, don't indulge in substances. That's not how you heal, right? And then told me to stay close to home. Um, my partner at the time and I decided that it was a good idea to move to PEI. So we packed up our house and we left and we moved to PEI. And I don't know if anybody's ever been out on the East Coast, but it is very seasonal. You work for the summer and then you sit around and drink for the rest of the year. I was out there for 3 years, almost 4 years. Came back to Alberta. Me and my baby daddy split up as soon as we got here. There was just too much unspoken I'm sorry's, right? Like we grieved differently. His was to shut down, mine was to blow up, right? I wanted somebody to talk to me. I wanted to talk to somebody about how much I was hurting, and I had nobody to talk to. And then I'm also isolated, and I'm 4,700 and some odd kilometers away from any family member. So I'm out there and I'm alone and I don't really know what I'm doing. So I'm just constantly stuffing myself with liquor and, other substances just to kind of numb myself out, right? Because I didn't want to feel that grief anymore. We were out there and we came back, we broke up, and I proceeded to go on a no surrender bender for a few years. When I would drink, I would get really suicidal, and it was really scary. There were times when I can remember sitting in front of this pill bottle and like crying and wanting everything to stop, but being too fucking scared to pull the trigger. Um, my last, before I ended up in Rocky View, I was in the crisis stabilization unit. They called the doctor that I was working with, right? I was trying to explain all my traumas and I was trying to explain everything that had happened, like my father leaving, my grandfather committing suicide. I had glorified suicide so much because my grandfather killed himself. I was trying to explain that, like the loss of my son, it's so hard. And this woman looked at me and she's like, I think you're an alcoholic. And I told her where to go and how to get there. And I packed up all my stuff and I signed out against medical advice. I got my mom and dad to come pick me up at Rocky View, and I proceeded to spend the next 3 days crying at my mom's. Because I didn't know what to do, right? And I ended up signing up for the inpatient program at Sunrise. I went there, I lasted 3 days, and I started to get suicidal again. And I think it was because I was alone and I didn't like being alone. So I ended up going back to the hospital. They did some more stuff with me. And then when I got out of the hospital, I contacted Sunrise again and I asked if I could do the outpatient program, because that way I wasn't disconnected from my family and I wasn't like doing this alone. So I went to Sunrise. I completed the outpatient program, got really involved in service. It was mentioned early on while I was in treatment that like it's really hard to fall out of the middle when you're like when you're in the middle, right? Unity, service, recovery. And so, I had the service part down pat. Like I had like some like 13 or 14 service positions. Like it was crazy. Like I had no business taking that much stuff on. So my background is event management and marketing. So when they had event chairs at these meetings, I was like, oh, that's right up my alley. And I ended up taking all of them and not leaving not leaving them for anybody else. Like it was the Taylor show. Unity, I was a really big part of. I would go to events and dances and all of these things and, try to keep myself in the middle. Except I wasn't working on my recovery, right? I wasn't doing the work. I was just going and hoping that through osmosis, I would get what these people were putting down. And I got really good at quoting the big book. And, it got to the point where people would be like, oh yeah, Taylor, that was a great share. And I'm like, thanks, I rehearsed it. But, it got me so far, right? And then, I ended up getting into a relationship with this guy who was also in treatment, and this guy ended up relapsing, and I used that as an excuse to relapse, right? Because in my sick mind, I'm like, well, if he's using, then he'll want to use with me. He had a totally different kind of drug. You know, I ended up relapsing for 4 months. At the end of my relapse, you know, I was actively looking for heroin, and I'd never touched heroin before in my life. You know, I was more of a cocaine type person. I like the quick things, right? Um, and so at the end of that 4 months, like I was at risk of homelessness. Like my mom had had enough at that point. She was very much sick of me just coming and going as I pleased, not paying rent, coming home drunk, using in their house. Um, you know, and my last day loaded, I was sitting on a floor and throwing up blood. And I remember hearing it in the rooms, right? AA ruins a good drunk. And I'm sitting on the floor and I'm crying and I'm just not having a good time. And this poor unfortunate soul who said I could use drugs at his house. He's like, "You're really fucked up, hey?" And I'm like, "Yeah, bro, like I know that." Um, but I ended up calling another member and she was like, "Well, when you're done, right? Like, but you have to make that decision." Um, so I ended up going back to my mom's house. Um, and then that day, they shut us down for the pandemic. And it was like lockdown after lockdown after lockdown. I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't go anywhere if I wanted to, right? I didn't want to be homeless. I'd never been exposed to a street life. I was always taken care of, right? I was a little bit spoiled, right? I think that's why I rebelled so hard, is because I was spoiled. And if I didn't get my fucking way, I was gonna find one way or another to get it. Um, but so for the first 9 months, all I did was online meetings. And then they started to open it up and my mom started to let me leave the house a little bit, you know. I could only go to meetings. I couldn't go other places. Um, but so, you know, I got a sponsor there. She took me through the big book. Uh, that was my first kind of real set of steps. That was where I got real fucking honest about certain things that had happened in my life, right? Obviously, more will be revealed, and Creator's not going to give me what I can't fucking handle. So, at that first set of steps, there was a reason the sexual assaults didn't come up, right? There was a reason that a lot of stuff didn't come up because at that point in time, I wasn't equipped with the tools to be able to handle it. Um, you know, Creator's only going to give me what I can carry. And at that point in time, all that I could carry was the grief from my son, right? And all of my heavy ass resentments. um, it it really opened the doors, right? It allowed me to see life in a new perspective, and that's kind of when I realized that I didn't want to die. I just wanted that feeling of loneliness to go away. And you know, when I finished my step 12, right? And like obviously you go through and you do your 10, 11, and 12, right? Like that fucking you have to maintain that healer. Um, if you don't maintain it, right? Like if you don't use it, you lose it. And um, you know, doing those types of things, like it helped until it didn't, right? And that's kind of how I know in my own perspective, like for what works for me is when, you know, it's not working anymore, I'm losing it and it's time to do it again. And that's kind of how I've judged when I do another set of steps, right? It's like it's roughly once every year. I'm a little overdue right now, but life's been pretty good. There's been a heavy reliance, this blind fucking faith in Creator that whatever Creator puts in front of me is obviously what I'm supposed to be doing at that exact moment. Um, you know, I've learned a lot about myself, right? I've met a lot of really cool people. So I have ceremony family in Winnipeg, Wilfred Buck. He's the star guy, they call him. He goes around to different schools, bringing this portable planetarium, right? And he takes it and he tells star stories. He's also an alcoholic, right? He sobered up. Him and his wife, they sobered up in AA, and that was kind of something that really spoke to me when I met them, right? Because I was like, you're just like me. And like there was so many similarities, right? There was I wasn't looking for differences anymore, right? I was looking for similarities between me and other people in this program and finding ways that, maybe something worked for them that I can start to integrate into my life, because maybe that area of my life's not doing too hot right now. But through, meeting my ceremony family, like it's exposed me to so much. There's where they host an event every year. It's called Teepees and Telescopes, where these elders come and they bring in their star stories and their old knowledge and like everything. And then you have NASA and MIT that come in and they bring their big telescopes, and it has opened a world of opportunity for me. And Creator put those people in my path. Prior to me meeting them, right? It was maybe 2 weeks before I actually like met them. I was sleeping 3 o'clock in the morning. This big white light woke me up, and now I know, like I heard a really distinct ringing. And now I know, like it sounded like an eagle whistle. But at the time it freaked me out, and I didn't tell anybody. Because I didn't want anybody to think that I was using again, because in my mind I was like, what the hell is this, right? It woke me up. There's a big bright light, and it came back as soon as I sat up to look at it, came back in, and I brought that into the night lodge, right? And they told me it was a beacon. That was the time, that was the day that my spiritual journey started. And it has to do with my namesake, right? So like my name, I said it in the beginning there a little bit, Kukomo Tipskaupisim, right? My name is Grandmother Moon. I am the light in the dark. I'm I'm Grandmother Moon. Sometimes, when I say it again, it hits me all over again, right? That, there's, as big as these shoes are sometimes, and as intimidating as it feels sometimes, right? Creator picked me for a reason. And I just have to have that blind faith to keep that belief that whatever I'm doing here is obviously for a reason. Because the amount of times that I've tried to take myself out intentionally or unintentionally, I'm still here. I'm proud of who I am today. Whereas like when I was younger and I was getting bullied for it, I wasn't, right? I didn't want to be native, right? It got to the point where I was telling people, yeah, I'm Colombian, even though I don't speak Spanish. But today, right, like I know what it means to be Nehiel. And I know in my heart that, this journey that I'm on, right, it's all predetermined, right? I've talked to many elders about this, right? I agreed to do this life when I decided to take this physical form. I made this agreement before coming down here, right? I brought my gift with me. And everything that I'm going through in life, right? All of the highs, all of the lows, the trials and tribulations of Taylor Dume. I mean, I agreed to all of it, right? So when shit hits the fan, and shit does hit the fan, there are many times where shit will hit the fan, and I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? And I freak out for a little bit, but then I remember I agreed to this. This is going to teach me a lesson, right? Everything is a blessing or a lesson. And in the end, even those lessons are blessings. Today I immerse myself in my culture. I try to actively take part in as much as I can, because there's so much that I don't know, right? But like that's not to discredit what I do know, but what I do know is that I don't know a whole lot. But what I do know is like I am a fan, right? I like it. I think I kind of cross addicted myself to the culture and to the ceremony, right? And that feeling that you get when you're in a lodge. Like my favorite ones are like obviously Sundance, right? Like that was the most powerful ceremony that I'd ever experienced. And then also the night lodge, right? The shaking tents. It's a whole new world. It took me till completing my 4th year Sundance to realize and I guess, learn that there is an opposite Sundance that happens in the winter. So that's going to be a really cool transition piece for me, right? Is just learning more. Um, like the culture saved my life and it continues to keep me sober, right? There's so much in this world that, I can wholeheartedly say is because the culture showed it to me, right? Like I live a really good life today. Um, I've done a lot in the last 5 years. It's not where I thought I was going to be, right? Like when I came into recovery, I had my event management background, event management and marketing, and now I work in human services, helping people, right? This past year, I helped build a treatment center, and I never thought that I'd be doing that. I developed their cultural program for it, by exposing, people who are disconnected to the culture. And because I travel a lot for ceremony, um, I've created quite the network. And, I have a lot of elders in all different kinds of places. And, I call them whenever I can. And I'm just like, hey, how you doing? Right? Sometimes I need advice. Sometimes it's just to say hello. Um, but it's something that I wish that I could share with everybody. And now I'm kind of put in this position where I'm working directly with communities. They're utilizing the program that I built, and I get the opportunity to go and meet different elders and knowledge keepers from these communities to see how we can integrate their pieces, into the recovery program that, you know, I built. Life today is pretty sweet. Um, I have my own house. I I pay my rent. I pay my car bill. There's so much that I owe to this life. And like without it, like I don't know, I'm just like looking around my house right now. Like this is mine. I did this. Well, I didn't do it. If this was Taylor's will, then this would not be it, right? This is Creator put me here. Creator has opened doors. Laying down that tobacco and asking for where I'm supposed to be, let my path be guided by the healers and the teachers. Help me. It's it's beautiful and it's what I want for everybody. I wish everybody could get this, right? And it's bittersweet because not everybody does. There's a lot of people that didn't make it, right? There's a lot of people that won't make it. My old sponsor used to tell me, you've been handpicked by God, right? Um, really nice. And I just want to thank Bill for letting me come on here, for including me. And I think that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Taylor. It's amazing. I could see a lot of your emotion still back behind the words and how grateful you are for this and yeah, and I learned some things that I didn't know about you today. And and we talk periodically and have for many years now and it's been a pleasure getting to know you. Um you had mentioned a couple things that I want to touch on. One was you know, the sexual abuse again. It's a very, very common subject in our communities. It's one of those subjects that don't get talked about a lot. And in many respects, I think it's the underlying cause of a lot of addictions and dysfunction, family dysfunction, right? And and it's very courageous that you and Rae-Dawn have both touched base about that today. And do you notice that it's a subject that's not talked about in our like in these like in these engagements that we do as we kind of go into communities and we're talking about whatever it is, that's the one thing that doesn't get talked about. Would you agree?
Yes. Just with the work that I've done, uh, in my personal life, um, there's such a taboo on it, right? There's a lot of things that, are kind of swept under the rug. There's a lot of predators in families that are protected, right? There's a lot of people that don't talk about it. And when it happens, they don't hold those people accountable, right? Unfortunately, that seems to be the pattern, right? Like I see it in my own reserve. I'm seeing it in the communities that I'm working with. Like it's not talked about. And when it is, it's almost like there's a blame, right? Like not the perpetrator, but the victim, right? There's a blame on the victim. Why are you talking about this? Why are you saying those things? Why would you say those things? And it's really fucking sad. Um, and I think that, by having people like, Rae-Dawn and myself and other people that I've met in recovery come and openly talk about these things, um, it eases some of that. It gives almost like a similarity, right? Like, oh, that happened to you too, right? And it's so prominent in our communities, right? You see it, how it stems from residential school. These kids went to residential school. They were sexually assaulted at a young age. They think that's normal. So they come home and they do it to their kids, and they do it to their kids, and they do it to their kids. It is a continuation of the genocide that these people have placed on us. And, I think the more that we talk about it and the more that we, hold those people accountable, right? Like, I'm not saying that it's almost like we have to do better. We have to help the people that have been sexually assaulted as well as the people that are doing the sexual assault, right? We have to really look at how we fix the ripple effect, because the ripple effect is fucking tearing our communities apart.
Mhm. And it's really sad because as we point the finger and blame the perpetrator is actually the victim of, the residential school abuse, right? But we don't look that far back, or most people don't look that far back at this. We just look at kind of like what it is right on the surface right now, but really it's a ripple effect backwards at kind of what happened, over all those years ago. And it's awesome that you guys are talking about it and that I talk about it too when I go to communities. And as my next topic, I know I'm supposed to do a cultural presentation, but I'm gonna do the spiritual malady topic next. But as we discuss the spiritual malady, the malady looks like many different things, right? And at the root of a lot of the malady is what we're talking about here. But kind of switching gears, as you got your start in 12-step recovery, right? And then you've moved heavily over to the First Nation side, and you're primarily your recovery realm is the First Nation and cultural activities and ceremony and all these kinds of things. Um, what do you recommend to people that maybe haven't taken any steps in any direction? Like for me, I also went the 12 step and then it took me to culture too. I was part of a Sundance group. There was 12 of us, and then we were all helpers at this one Sundance. And then we finally on day 3 got to all talk together, and we all realized we were all 12-step starters that came to Sundance. And many of them used the culture as their foundation now, but all 12 of us had their start on the 12 steps. So do you have any insight to somebody new that, might not know where to begin?
Um, I remember one of my elders telling me, like, the lodge has been waiting for you to come home. Um, it's it's kind of intimidating in the beginning, right? Like I didn't know really where to look either, right? My first exposure to a sweat was at the treatment center that I went to. And then, finding other people in the 12 steps that, were exposing themselves to ceremony and, were inviting me to take part in ceremony. As well as through connections with work, right? Like I had, I met my ceremony family through work, right? So, getting into, just getting into different circles, right? Networking, getting out of my shell, that really helped me find new people and new places. I think that the easiest way to say this is, don't be scared of it. It's not scared of you. It's waiting for you to come home. They're waiting. They've been praying for you to come home. And when you finally get there, everything is going to make sense, right? It's going to look different for you than it did me. And obviously it looked different for you as well, Bill. But, when you start to ask for it, it'll come, right? That's how it's been happening in my life, right? Like I've asked for ceremonies, right? Like I needed help with the grief with my son, and I put tobacco down, I asked for it, and suddenly one of my elders does a grief and loss. And it was a water ceremony, and like it just changed everything for me, right? But you also have to go out and seek it, right? It's waiting for you, yes, but you have to go look for it.
Hmm. You had said something about you didn't want to be native. I could totally relate with that. And so kind of tying that in, at least in my experience, like not wanting to be native. And my question to you is like, what is recovery like done for you? And so for me, it allowed me to find all aspects of who I was truly meant to be, and a huge part of that was Indigenous, right? And um, but what is recovery when you hear sobriety and you hear recovery, there's a big difference, right? What is the difference?
Oh, my will to live. Um, I did the sobriety thing until that woman plucked me out of an AA room, right? And then she started to really grasp at what recovery was. And it's it's like this tingling sensation under my skin where it's not my skeleton trying to get out of my body anymore. It's like truth bumps, right? They're not goosebumps, they're truth bumps. When I'm living in the likeness of my creator and what God wants me to be, everything is so fucking effortless, man. Like everything, like uh, it's like the light. Like I know that people say that like the light bulb turns on, but like I think that there's like an honest light in my heart too. And when I started to actually get into recovery and like honestly work at it, it turned that light on. And like I know that you say the longest distance is from your head to your heart, right? And I think that sometimes like my heart overpowers that, right? In all senses. Like I just have so much love and appreciation for life despite, being thrown curveballs quite often. I still have a deep sense of appreciation for the life that creator gifted me. Um, And I think that, that whole acceptance piece and, living life on life's terms, it gets a lot easier if you're in recovery and not just sobriety, right? Sobriety, I'm fucking white knuckling it. I'm living in resentment. I'm living in fear. Recovery, it's blind faith that creator's doing all of this for me, right? Not to me, for me. And I think that that's the biggest difference that I've noticed in my life.
Hmm. Yeah, and just to add to that, I think recovery also is nothing's really out of place. Everything's happening exactly the way that it's supposed to. And so thus we can be comfortable in our own skin. Sometimes just being sober, it's like nothing's really in its right place. So, we're still restless and irritable and discontented, and, we're still mad at the world or mad at people. And there's a big difference, right? And I think the other difference between sobriety and recovery is a lot of recovery takes work. And, if, if I was just sober, which I was before, but I was still angry and mean, and thank God I burned it right down because it allowed me to crack open and find a path and to heal up a bit and to be okay with like who I am and find my own culture and things. So anyway, does anyone thank you, Taylor, for coming to share and for answering and talking so candidly about your life and some other things. And is there anybody that would like to ask Taylor any questions or comments about her share or anything?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say that a lot of what you've shared here resonates with, I think, a lot of people, including myself. There's many pieces here. I made some little notes for myself, so I wanted to go back and just mention them. So the bullying, leaving the reserve, being bullied, being perceived as poor when you didn't yourself feel like you were poor, you were rich. I just totally get that. It's like, what is wealth? Wealth is I guess different for different people and how they see what wealth is, and being wealthy or being rich or feeling just okay with because you have all your needs met according to where you're at with your family, with your life, with your community. And then it's just very jarring when someone points out that you're not. You're substandard, you're below, you're impoverished, and so and then the identity piece that goes with that, then you start to realize and you figure out it had to do with the culture. Now you don't know if that's such a proud thing anymore, so then people start, guessing about where you might stem from, and eventually you just go with it. I get that. Totally, completely get that. And this all just like you never really seen yourself as different till you left the reserve. And then when you leave the reserve, the confines of your own community where you come from, people start wanting to put you into what they categorize people as with how they perceive their world. And so they want to know where you're from, and they want to say you're from South America, or you're from, these Spanish places and stuff. And eventually you just go with it. And so you're kind of just like not being honest to yourself right there. I get that totally. The abandonment thing about the father you mentioned, 100% abandonment, being given away, daddy issues, all of that. You didn't say given away, but like for me, it was given away. And even if it was to my own family, it was still, you still suffer from abandonment issues. There's strength that comes from that, but what you don't realize, I guess, is as you're going through life that it actually does impact you, and it's still hard to admit still that those are impacting you. So you try to have to dig around and figure out, how does it impact me though? But it does, and you just have to kind of find out, how and what in your behavior, day-to-day behavior, how I express myself, how is that really actually stemming from abandonment issues? So there was that, and then the most difficult topic, the sexual abuse. And so no one wants to talk about the sexual abuse, but the sexual abuse is alive and well, unfortunately, in a lot of our communities still. And to be able to just, the courage that you showed by sharing that is like amazing for me to watch today, because I've never actually heard anyone, and I'm 60 years old, and my screen is filtered, so I probably don't look that age, but I mean I am. And in all my life up to this point, no one wants to talk about that. You might, like, as friends one-on-one here, some private corner of your kitchen or home, but not on an open forum like this. So I want to give that to you because it's so very important, for people to hear that, for people to hear that they're not alone in that, and because it's so difficult. It is a difficult thing, and the fact that you stemmed it back to residential school, 100%. And how has that impacted? That's still yet to be discussed and explored in open forums, I guess, going forward. And I don't see a lot of people jumping all over that one as like a topic for discussion in wide open forums yet. But not to say that there aren't places people can go to find and get help, but it's to say in Indigenous communities, we'll have a lot of people come to our communities and be invited to talk in open forum and stuff, and sexual abuse in our communities and how it impacts our people, how it impacts our families, and the secrecy, the not talking, not telling, and to safeguard those people because our communities are so tiny and small. And so, we don't want to hurt other people, but in fact, and that's the reason why I think is we want to safeguard those people because those people are people everyone knows in our communities, and we don't want to hurt someone, even if we were hurt ourselves. We don't want other people to be hurt, so we don't want to talk about it because of those things, because it's usually people who are closest to us, to our families. And so there's that. So thank you, Taylor, for bringing that forward. Oh my God, that's so much. I feel emotional right now. So thank you for that. Merci, Cho.
Yes. Thank you again, Taylor. And great insight, Claudia. Awesome. Anyone else? Robbie. Robbie, you can unmute and feel free, bro.
Thanks, Bill. Hey, Taylor. I just wanted to say hello, and it was really nice to kind of fill out the last couple of years. I've seen you on Facebook, and I know a little bit about your journey after you left Calgary. But it's beautiful to see where you've connected and where you've ended up. And I just wanted to say thank you for your share and the speaker before as well. It's really inspiring on an Easter weekend, working with my dad, just to be able to hear some old friends and successes in their lives. So thanks.
Thanks, Robbie.
Aw, thanks, Robbie. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. Okay. So I think what I'm going to do is if there's no more questions for Taylor, anyone else? Now's your chance. So Tay, you can camera off and mute, and thank you so much. And I'm going to talk about the spiritual malady a little bit, and then we will go to our next speaker, Brittany. So the spiritual malady, what is it? How does it drive addiction and all self-destructive behavior? Our previous speakers have touched on it, and anyone that's in recovery, they will touch on it because they know that these other issues are driving forces behind our addiction and self-destructive behavior. In 12-step recovery, we often focus on some big topics. The first topic would be resentments. It's like, who do I resent? And in 12-step recovery, they get you to do lists of people who you resent and why you are resentful. What did they do to you? And how did it affect you? Another area is fears. You'll notice a lot of people in recovery, they talk about fear a lot. Fear is like a second nature word to people in recovery because we understand that it's the driving force of our lives. And it's kind of below the surface, right? Most human beings, and I'm going to say all human beings, not just people in recovery, are driven by the subconscious, and a lot of that subconscious is fear. The fear is kind of what controls our lives in all aspects for the most part. I wouldn't say in every aspect, but in most aspects. And the fear is something you can't see, right? And our society that we live in, it's a breeding ground of fear. And So a lot of our thoughts that we have that are subconscious thoughts, it's thoughts of like, what am I gonna lose or what am I not gonna get? Taylor talked about the validation that she needed from older men because she had abandonment issues. And she didn't realize that until somebody had pointed it out and said, look at your pattern. And that's kind of how it has to go, right? Because until you actually are guided in a way where you can start seeing these things, they just drive your life. So person after person after person, relationship hopping, toxic relationship after toxic relationship, it doesn't really matter. Job hunt, job after job after job. The amount of people I've heard that have said, I got this job, it's the one, and 6 months later they've quit and they hate everyone at that job. And then 2 months later they got another job and this is the job. And then 6 months later they hate everyone at that job. And these are all symptoms of like the spiritual malady and um relationship hopping, using men or women for sex and just fear drives it all underneath. And if we don't start looking at what's underneath, we will continue to act out in these self-destructive behaviors. Taylor also talked about suicide. And in our community, suicide is pretty rampant, right? And typically, most suicides are people that are drug or alcohol users that don't really know what's wrong with them, as at least as far as like, what this disease of addiction is. So as they use drugs and alcohol as a medicine to kind of manage the feelings, the guilt and the shame and the fear and the anxiety and the depression, eventually it doesn't work. And then but they can't stop drinking because their brain needs that relief. So eventually you can't live with alcohol or drugs, but you can't live without it. And if you get to that place, suicide's a pretty good option. But when you look at suicide and, domestic violence and sexual abuse and all these things, it all stems from a spiritual sickness. And what recovery really does is it starts rooting out. You start with the behaviors and you start looking at what you're doing. Where are you resentful? What are your fears? What are the habits and actions that you take in your life that are not serving you? Where are you people pleasing? Where are you, not standing up for yourself? Where are you trying to avoid a conflict in your life because you don't want to have the conflict with somebody because of whatever reason? The issue is you never really avoid the conflict because the conflict's internal. So recovery really roots these things out. And, you've heard from our speakers today that none of them have done it alone, right? Rae-Dawn talked about having her mentors and being able to talk about these things and hanging around the ladies to help her fill her cup and being in these environments that was conducive to her, either being in a safe place and comfortable where she could talk or having mentors that can help you like dig within. And I think a big part of recovery is having people around you that will care more about your life than your feelings and tell you the truth. And some of this inventory, like we're talking about inventory, really, some of it's not all on pen to paper, right? Some of it is, verbal through talking. And like Rae-Dawn and Taylor both talked about sexual abuse, which Rae-Dawn so beautifully explained how she wouldn't talk about it, how she just tried to go along with her life and just live it and tried to push it down and push it down. But the thing about this is you can't push it down. And if you don't learn how to deal with your shit will deal with you. And it will. But the moment you start talking about it, then it's like a relief valve. It's almost like a air being released out of a tire. It just starts. And the more you talk about it, the more you talk about it, the less power that it has. To the point that as you keep talking about it and you see the behaviors in your life that actually stemmed from this root, you can finally get to a place where you're okay with who you are, no matter what had actually happened. A lot of the guilt and shame have long gone because these women and men have talked about it so much that they can finally get onto a screen and have no issues with sharing about that because they've healed a lot of their pain through the talking about it and looking at their patterns because it's all part and parcel, right? And what we're talking about is the spiritual malady. And when I looked at my anger, anger was huge, violence was huge for me. But the reality is I didn't want to be angry and I didn't want to be violent, but I didn't know how to be anything different. So how do you try to be different when you can't be different? It's exactly like me as a drug addict, alcoholic. How can I not drink and I don't want to drink and but I keep drinking? How can I not be angry but I keep getting angry? Well, just like an alcoholic with substance or booze, they always have an excuse. Oh, well, it was this, oh, it was that, the family, I had to, the job, or, whatever it is the excuse to pick up. But really, in their heart of hearts, they don't know why they do it. And it's the same thing with anger. It's the same thing with relationship hopping. I didn't know why I would get angry, but I would always have a decent excuse for you. And this is why, this is what you did, or this is what the world did. And I'm going to blame somebody else because I don't even know what's driving it. But really, what drives it is my fear. And a lot of it stemmed from me not wanting to be Indigenous. So I was actually suppressing a huge part of who I really was. And so also with these women who shared what they had went through, because they were pushing things down, they weren't really able to be who they needed to be or wanted to be because they were trying to protect themselves because it is painful. But what we learn in recovery is if you don't face the pain, then it dominates you. And so after you are able to face some of the pain and me acknowledging like why I didn't want to be First Nations and started on peeling back the layers and seeing, where my anger was really coming from, then it started to release, like that release valve. And then I started becoming less and less angry. And then I could share about it. And as I understood my own anger and my violence issues, I could talk about it. And the more I talked about it, the better I could articulate it. The better I could articulate it, the better other people understood it. The better other people understood it, the more people wanted to talk about it. So then, because everyone struggles with these things, so then we become these light bulbs of hope for other people. And one thing that Creator designed us to do was He gave us a heart to live with and to guide our lives using our heart intuition. But it's been blocked by all of these resentments and fears and these traumas that we've been through. But as we uncover that, um, my heart can lead the way. And Rae-Dawn and Taylor's heart, like we've all opened our hearts, and you'll hear our other speakers, their hearts are open too because they've done a lot of this work. And so, in essence, I'll finish with this. The definition of shame is dishonoring one's own consciousness. So every time you don't live truthful with who you really are, you create a little layer of shame. So you dishonor your own consciousness. You dishonor the God or the creator in you. The thing about dishonoring God or creator in you is you can't really lie to creator. You can lie to yourself and you can lie to other people, but you can't lie to the creator within you. And so you'll notice a lot of people in recovery, if they start telling like a lie, they can't take it. And then so they'll tell the truth at any cost. Eventually they'll have to tell the truth because we can't lie. Honesty is the foundation of someone in recovery's life. And you can't lie, man. Because every time you think you're getting away with a lie, you actually never get away with it because the creator in you is actually the one who's in charge and you can't do it. And if you do it, it's the ego doing it. And then you get spiritually sick again. Then you drink again. Why? Because you need relief. You need to blot it out. That's why alcohol and drugs is the medicine. The problem is it's a poison medicine that doesn't actually work. And the older you get, the more you'll suffer the pain of not being honest and not having integrity. And so there's some very specific hard and fast line patterns that you'll see with people that are in recovery. And people, and not just people in recovery, like people that live a good, healthy, honest life as well. So the spiritual malady affects everybody. The thing about addicts and alcoholics, if we live there, we drink, and to drink or to drug for us is to die, whereas other people may not die, at least physically, even though the malady slowly destroys you anyway, and life becomes pretty gray and not pleasant, even for people that aren't addicts or alcoholics. So everybody needs a little creator in their life and a little bit of work and looking at inside themselves. So us as recovery people, we're so lucky and we're so grateful that our drug or our drink took us to the brink of life or death, because we on the other on the other side we found so much life, and it's such a beautiful way of life, and it's a very simple way of life, and it's about serving others instead of taking to protect ourselves and validate that hole in our soul. God fills that hole in our soul. Creator fills it. Service fills it. Helping people fill it. And that's what Creator designed us to do. He designed us to love and to give, and society and our traumas have conditioned us to be selfish. Yeah. Anyway, so hopefully Brittany's in position. Britt, are we in position, girl? Yes, she is on her way. So we have Brittany, Alysha Tilley. Like I said to you guys when we started this talk today, I've known her I'm getting to know her, right? She's been over to buy merch, and we've chatted a little bit on Facebook and seen each other at the meetings. And, I've met her friend Tim a few times as she hangs with him, and, real good people. And, you know, she's getting into her culture too. I think part of her story is a little similar to mine and Taylor's, and like a lot of our people, right, disconnected from their culture. And so she's really moving in that direction and finding her way. She's got quite a few years under her belt of sobriety now, and she's doing good things in the world. So I'm really grateful to have her here. And Brittany, thank you for coming, and the stage is yours, girl.
Awesome. Hello. So, bear with me, I'm a little bit nervous. Um, yeah, thank you so much for having me on here. Recovery is such a journey, and a lot of, starting out, a lot of what I went through, when I was younger was, I grew up first living with my mother in Calgary, Alberta. I was born here in Calgary. I have family that, on my father's side, who's from Spasm First Nation. My yaya is from there, and she married my grandfather, my papa, who was from Cornwall, England. And so I, I'm mixed, and so part of, um, my journey has been battling with my identity, I guess. Um, I was raised with my mom until I was 7, and then I moved, to my dad to Cochrane, Alberta when I was 7, and I stayed with them until I was 13, 14. There was alcohol present in my home with my father, but it was never something that was, abused in front of me or my brother. I have an older brother, and it was just kind of like, when we go camping or something, it was present. But I guess, watching how, you know, uh, how my dad drank. He, would crack open a bottle of Jack Daniels and just drink it, straight. Either putting it in a cup or just straight out of the bottle when we were camping and but when we get home it wouldn't be like that. So I actually my paternal grandmother struggled with alcoholism, my whole upbringing and my whole life. And, she later succumbed to that, passing away. And um, there was always this like weird stigma on it. And, can't see grandma because, she's drunk or, my father kind of sheltered us from that life. And that was, it was different. You know, I didn't really understand because I was so young that it was like a bad thing. And, it was just something I thought people did as a choice. They choose to drink that so they're alcoholics. I didn't know anything about it. And going into, my teen years, I my dad worked on the rigs, and so he was gone a lot, and I didn't get to see my mom all that much. And so I was left with my stepmom. And you know, I gave her so much grief. Me and my brother gave her so much grief growing up because, we just wanted our dad to be around and didn't have our mom or didn't see her much. And so we were being raised by a woman um, that was new to us and different. And, you know, I had so much resentment, against both her and my father, right? With my father being gone and my stepmom being there, but she's doing the best that she can. She didn't have any of her own children, but she, married into a family with two kids, and so she was still learning too, right? And it wasn't until I got a little bit older that I kind of let that resentment go for her. And because she did the best that she could with what she was given. You know, we're all trying to navigate these things and these ways of living. And so I definitely, started drinking when I was 13, 12, 13. And I started, hanging around some kids that were, they were doing other things, yeah, like other drugs that I never really had any interest in doing because they freaked me out. But when I first drank, I was like, oh, this makes me feel relaxed. I have, chronic anxiety and since I was young, but when I was younger, I didn't really know what it was. It was just like I just never felt like I fit in anywhere, and I just always in a constant, stress state. And so I, started hanging out with these kids, and I kind of felt like I found people that understood me, but later to find out like, in such a wrong way, in such a negative way. And so I was hanging out. I ran away. I remember running away and ended up with a couple of my friends in like this house. And um, my like we were hanging out with men that were like in their 20s, and I was like 13. And so then I thought it was cool. I didn't think it was like a bad thing, right? And we were drinking and smoking pot, and they were doing other things. And I remember, this one specific time that I had ran away and I was with my one friend, and I had smoked some pot, but it had some other stuff in it, and it messed me up so bad. And I remember calling, like the police and like calling the ambulance and being like, you need to like come get me. And obviously they notified my mom, my stepmom, and she ended up coming, and they told her where, because I was in the back of the ambulance, and they told her where I was. And I remember just being so fearful, but I was also so sick and just being like, oh, she's just gonna scream at me because, both my dad was a yeller. He yelled a lot, and um, that caused a lot of, he was that type of guy that, because he was raised by, a residential school survivor and ex-military, my papa being in the military, they had a way of they were just really strict. They didn't play games, right? And so my dad kind of took that on, and we were kind of like we're seen, not heard. Um, you know, what are you crying about? Like if um, yeah, if you keep doing that, I'll give you something to cry for type thing. And so I learned how to suppress my emotions very early on. But anyways, and going into that situation where I thought my stepmom was going to freak out at me and lose her mind on me. And she just, like, in that moment, she met me with so much grace and fear. She was just so scared. First off, I had ran away. She didn't know where I was. And then she's getting this call stating that I'm in the back of an ambulance and I'm, like not doing well, like feeling sick and just, letting this drug work through my body. And I remember her sitting with me for like 3 days. And this is when my anxiety first started happening, where I was taking panic attacks. Like at the beginning, it was like 4 to 6 times a day. I would have full-blown panic attacks, not just like simple anxiety, not that anxiety is simple, but just complete terror attacks. And she just like laid with me. She took time off work and she just like tried her best just to, give me love and understanding and reassurance. But she still was always like, scared and trying to teach me like, this isn't the path. These aren't the people that you need to be walking with. And she really, really tried to instill these things. And she took on so much with my dad being gone. And, my dad was just doing what he felt like he needed to do, which was like provide for me and my brother and my mom, right? But when we're young, we don't understand that. We're just like, all we really understand is that, there's this like lack of presence. And I definitely missed my dad and I didn't understand. And, I fought against my stepmom so often. Um, but anyways, and so there was a lot of turmoil and a lot of drinking, and I had a situation where, I was out for the weekend at my friend's like her dad owned a campground, and I had some other friends that knew some of the stuff that I was going through, and they ended up breaking into my parents' home when I was gone and trashing my dad's house. Like, my dad's a hunter and he has like a bunch of like wildlife on the wall and stuff, and they were just like they put hats on it and just trashed my dad's house and stole from them. And anyways, and then my parents thought it was me, and so they ended up putting me into like family counseling, and I had to go through all of that, and I was just so like reluctant to deal with that. I was like, these strangers, like I'm not going to tell you my stuff. Like I'm just so tired of retelling and retelling and retelling the things that I'm going through because I feel like I'm not being heard. I'm so used to being silenced, right, I guess. And so that caused me a lot of turmoil. And then the next thing I know, I'm being told that I'm moving from my house in Cochrane and I'm being put in the system. And that again, I didn't even understand what was going on at that point. I was 14 and 13, 14 and just turning 14. And I then had a social worker, and I was moving into this place, and I moved into a place called Eagle Group Home, which is in Black Diamond, Alberta. And when you get in there, they like strip you of all your belongings. They search through all your stuff, like you can't have this, you can't have that, you can't, for the first 3 months, I didn't even have phone privileges. I couldn't contact anybody. Like, they live your life for you. And you're already scared. You're already going through these things, and then you're being plucked out of your home and put in here. And, you know, these are complete strangers. You're living with other kids that are going through the same things. And I remember there being bars on my window and then being like, is this real life right now? Like and I I've been through like our other speakers been through some abuse in my life of all forms. And I don't really talk about it too much because it resurfaces a lot of like unhealed things that I'm still currently working through, right? I'm currently in, therapy, trauma therapy, and working through some of the, early childhood traumas that I have. And only simply because, like, I want to heal through my recovery and have that emotional, yeah, yeah, sobriety. And also, like, I just don't want to inadvertently pass it on to my children. Like, I am a single mother of two daughters. And you know, my oldest daughter went through it with me. You know, um, when I was 20 years old, 19, 20 years old, was the first time that I got sober. First time I realized, like, oh, I just have a problem with drinking because I didn't know what alcoholism truly was. I just thought it was a choice. And so I was like, okay. And so I picked up and I moved to Revelstoke, BC with my sister, Susie, and she took me in and she just like helped me, you know, feel better and you know and distract my brain and put myself on a different path. And you know, she was just supportive in there. And I ended up moving from there and I moved so from Revelstoke I moved to Vernon, BC. um and I was with somebody there and still sober and you know, and I ended up being sober for 3 years before my relapse. And um you know, going from there, and then I moved to Kelowna, BC, and you know, I ended up getting pregnant with my oldest daughter, Ezra, and um, that situation wasn't the best, right? Because when I had spoken on the fact that you know, that I was pregnant, it was met with some aggression and some threats, and so I ended up moving back to Calgary, you know, and and fast forward, you know, my daughter's 1 years old, and you know, I'm still sober, um, and I was with somebody at this point, and you know, he had just mentioned me, oh, like you can have a drink, and like because again, I didn't understand what alcoholism was. I was just like, oh yeah, like I've been sober for 3 years. If I have one drink, it's fine. Like I'm gonna be fine. I don't, you know, that naive brain, and they say it's like it's a progressive illness, and it is. It truly is. But it's like, you know, every relapse, I feel like we start off where we ended the last time. You know, it progresses way quicker the next time, you know. And and that's what happened to me. I took that drink and, you know, I think I only had 3 drinks that first time and I was fine. And then, you know, and then I was like, oh, I have this, you know, craving for it. And so then I would, you know, and I felt like it was like I had more of a mental craving for it. Like I want to feel numb or I want to have fun. And, you know, when I was younger, it started out with fun. It started out with wanting to, you know, just be a part of something and feel free and just be relaxed because I was always anxious, always anxious. And you know, and going into that relapse was, you know, I progressed so quickly and, you know, I ended up being out for a few years. But in that time, you know, my daughter went through so much because I was, you know, person to person and I didn't know who I was and I was putting up with a lot of things that, you know, in a sober mind that I would never, ever, never, ever put up with. And, you know, physical abuse, sexual abuse, mental abuse, you know, financial, all these things. Um, and, you know, my daughter witnessed it and you know, at the beginning of my sobriety, I carried a lot of guilt towards that because she didn't deserve it. You know, our babies don't deserve to be brought here and to just go through so much turmoil, you know, and, you know, I still have so much healing to do. And, you know, this being in recovery is it's a life thing and such a blessing, you know. But then I didn't understand that, right? Like I just wanted to feel numb and I just wanted to do this or, you know, be at the life of the party or whatever. And then it slipped into now I'm drinking during the day or I'm drinking before work so that I don't shake and so that, you know, I can, you know, present myself as someone that is fine. Because I thought, you know, I thought I looked fine. I thought I walked fine. I thought I was doing fine, you know. But that's the insanity, right? And you know, I drank for, like I said, I drank for a few years and then it went into a time where my daughter came to me. This was like the last time that I had got drunk was my little baby came to me and she was just like, Mom, are you gonna drink a beer today? And it just like it hit me really, really hard. And I felt so much shame. But guess what I did? I went and drank over it because that's what I knew. That's what I knew. And I reassured her, "Oh no, no, I won't go drink. Don't worry, mommy's not gonna have a beer today." And I always, when I drank, I would always bring her to my nan's, or I bring her to my mother's or my auntie's. And so to me, I was like, she's safe. Like she doesn't have to deal with this stuff, and I'm keeping her safe. So I was justifying my actions with that. And it's sad because I wasn't really there for her. And I was putting her through all these things because I was, putting myself in these positions to get hurt. And then my daughter was, right there with me. And man, I just, I feel so heavy, when it comes to that. But and then fast forward, I'm talking to my uncle, and I knew nothing about AA. I think I seen something like on the TV once or twice, and I thought it was kind of like, it's bad now, but like I thought it was kind of a joke. I did. I was just like, oh, that's just like, hi, my name is Brittany and I'm an alcoholic. Like I was like, I don't want to do that. Like that just seems embarrassing. And I had such an ego, and you know, I didn't want to, but I got to that point where I went on that last bender, and I brought her to my nan's and I drank, and I woke up feeling hungover and just crappy, and feeling bad that I told my daughter, no, I'm not going to go drink, but then I plopped her at my nan's and I went and drank, and then I reached out to my uncle, and he actually told me about an AA group that was having a meeting that night, and this was like and so I went there, and I kept my head down. Like I looked at people's shoes for the first year. I feel like I was so scared, I think, at the beginning. I don't like to admit that I was scared, but that's part of my healing, right? Um, I was so scared to talk to people, to really immerse myself in the program, because again, I'm scared, I'm sick. I wanted so bad to go to treatment and to detox, but I couldn't because I was so scared that my daughter would be taken, or I didn't know where she'd be, and I just, so I remember just detoxing at home, and I'd end up taking 2 seizures, and it could have went a lot worse than it did, but I got through it, and I was able to go to a meeting every night. And what I did was just the first thing I heard was just stay sober just for today. And so that's what I did. I was just like tried to get myself as busy as I could. So I actually started doing beadwork, and started doing more painting, and I learned how to sew, and I started doing like I made ribbon skirts and medallions and earrings, and all these things. And I started to really become more interested in culture because I just seen so much around here. And where my family's from, like we're Salish, right? We're interior Salish, and in BC. And so like our culture is so different. I see all this like beautiful, artwork out here, and all this, beautiful traditional regalia, and and I'm so interested in it. So what I'm doing is I'm learning from people that I had met along the way, and I was taught how to bead, and I was taught how to make skirts, and I ended up going to a place called Awatan Healing Lodge. And um, I met some beautiful elders there, and some beautiful people that are still my friends from there, and they just kind of walked me through my first stages of sobriety, and along with going to the rooms of AA. But if you know me, in AA, you know that I was an ass. Say for um, I wasn't nice. I was, I'd have my headphones on, and I would put my head down, like, I don't want you to talk to me. Please do not approach me. Like, I'm not here for you. I'm here for me. And I just had so much hate and so much anger and so much stuff going on, and I didn't know who I was. And being a mixed Indigenous person, growing up, I went to Catholic school and, um, and so, fast tracking and trying to learn culture and trying to reclaim, and it's hard to reclaim out here because, I'm not super close to where my people are, but I'm able to embrace, Treaty 7 and I'm just really blessed to have met the people that I have in my recovery. There's so many beautiful people, and I've just, like they say, we don't walk this path alone. This is why we're here. We're here to, you know, um, try to, as painful as it is, we're here to just try to inspire other people, or just say, the smallest things when we share in our meetings. Um, People will resonate with you and they'll understand, because like a lot of us have gone through the same things, but we don't have the same past, right? We all have different pasts and different upbringings and things. And so I had a really hard time working my steps. It took me 5 years to do my first set of steps. And it floors people when I say that, because, I if there was not a higher power, which I didn't know who my higher power was throughout those 5 years, because again, I struggled with, if I have faith over here, um, and I practice Christianity, then am I turning my back on, my family and the things that my grandma went through, my yaya went through, and my aunties and my uncles. But it was I still feel so reluctant about it, right? And being open about, I'm both, reclaiming and embracing culture, but also like, just this year I got baptized Christian, and so I have this, this thing in me, and so for the longest time in those 5 years, it was really hard because I struggled with, what am I giving my stuff to? I admit that I'm powerless over alcohol. I admit that my life is unmanageable if I'm running the show. Um, but what am I giving it to? In my second step, like coming to believe that a power greater than me could restore me to sanity. I believe that there's a power greater than me. I always have, fundamentally, right? But again, it's all like learning, and it's different, and I'm just really blessed to be able to finally, in my 6th year of sobriety, just be like, this is who I am, and we don't have to explain, and we don't have to feel guilt or shame, you know, about it. And it is just my path and my journey. And I know a lot of people won't walk the same path or journey as me, and that's fine, right? Um, but I finally have this freedom of self. I let myself have the faith that I needed to have, right? I still I smudge and I pray, and I'm still, trying to learn more about my Salish heritage and and things, but I also am so blessed to just be able to, you know, go into a place of worship and have people just meet me with grace and understanding, just the same as if when I walk into a room of AA and people genuinely want to see you get better, right? That's just the beauty of it. And I do co-chair and sometimes chair at the Alpha House with my friend Tim, and I you know, I met such a beautiful human being in him, because he was like the one person too that, bamboozled. I say this in meetings, like he bamboozled me into doing my fifth step. Like he just handed me a phone and was like, so, you're gonna go do your fifth step at the Mount. And like the person was already on the phone. And I was like, you know, so then, I booked my fifth step and I was able to free what I could at that time. I'm on my second set of steps now, and I'm pretty excited. I was so scared of my fourth step because I didn't want to unpack all the stuff that I felt like I drank over. And um, you know, but once you get to your fourth step and you're like, you know, this is what my life was. This is not who I am now. This is not who I want to remain. This is not who I want to go back to being. Um, I I have a gift of life, right? And what a beautiful thing it is to have people that surround you and that could be complete strangers, but will give you a hug and be like, we'll love you until you love yourself, you know? I hear that a lot in meetings and you know, we genuinely need more of that in our world. You know, the people that I've met in the rooms of AA have changed my life, whether they know that or not, you know. Um, they have because their stories and their honesty and their just their willingness to be vulnerable really can change it for someone else, right? Um, so today I'm just really thankful and really blessed, and I think that's all I got.
Well, for being so nervous, you sure kicked some ass. Thank you,
Thanks.
Britt. That was really, really good. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Um, I think I'll lead off the questions. If anyone has any questions, get them ready or any comments for Brittany, and I'll lead it off. Just a couple things that really interested me um, as I was having a drag of my cigarette and smoking by the window and missed a little bit of it, and then I come and sit down, and then Rae-Dawn was like, "She got plucked from her family and went right into care," and I'm like, "I don't know, is that what she just said?" And she's like, "Yeah." I'm like, holy shit. And then you explained it more, right? And I was like, holy
Mm-hmm.
shit, that's wild, man. Like, what was that even like?
Oh man. I feel like I didn't even though I was like 14 years old, I still didn't really understand what was going on. I knew that you know, my stepmom was just like at her wit's end with me. And my dad being gone all the time, like he's working on the rigs, you know, 3, 4 months at a time. Sometimes he'd come back for, you know, a couple weeks or a month and then he'd be gone again. So it was like my stepmom was just like had enough, you know, and I remember wanting to go live with my mom, you know, my birth mom and she would have welcomed me with open arms, but my stepdad hated me, right? Like he was just like did not want anything to do with me. And so, you know, I just felt like I was longing for both of my parents. And I, you know, as much as now I'm so grateful for my stepmother just what she tried to do and with what she had, you know, we have to say that like our parents do for us what they were given, you know. They can only give us what they've been given. And you know, so I just felt very misunderstood and very like scared and again it felt like a blink of an eye like you know I'm in with my parents. I know that we're going to counseling. It was like we were doing therapy with you know within the family and they had already kicked my brother out at 13 and he went to live with my mom and you know so I felt really alone in that moment and but then you know my parents making that decision to I don't even know how this works, right? Like how did that even I still to this day don't know how you can do that. You know, how you can just be like, okay, I've had enough. You can just go to the, you know, go to the system. Like what? You know, and I was man, I had a male worker because we have like our social worker and then we have like, you know, a worker within the home and we had like a boys' side and a girls' side and I remember my worker being, you know, his name was Juan, and he was a predator. Like he was uncomfortable. And I watched him do a few things to other girls, and I remember being so scared and not, and being like, we can't say anything. They don't care. You can't say anything. There's nothing that you can do in there that is going to change anything for anybody. So it felt like the best thing you could do is keep your mouth shut, right? Because then what? They're going to take your privileges. We used to have the thing called privileges and they would take your privs and you then you're even more stuck in there and you know with having the bars on the window and oh my gosh it was just a lot it was a lot and so I felt angry I still feel a little bit of, I think I still have some questions for my parents. Like I understand, that them, me running away and doing all these things and drinking and, testing out, the waters of other substances. I scared them and I feel like that they thought they were doing the best thing for me. Um, but it sent me on a whirlwind because then I was on my own at 16 years old, um, trying to finish school and trying to work and, bouncing from house to house because again, I was 16. I didn't, you know, luckily I met a lot of really beautiful people along the way that it took me in, right? And cared for me. So yeah, family's not always the people that you're born into. It's the people that we choose.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
When you look at your 6-year journey
Hmm.
and it took you 5 years to do like one set of steps, and
Yeah.
now in your sixth year, how long has it taken you to get through to where you are, and where are you in your steps?
Yeah, so I'm on my step four. I'm actually taking like a solid, thorough look at myself and where I used to be fearful of it, now I'm just like I'm so blessed. Like what a gift that I am now free from this fear of self, fear of unleashing these things or letting these things of my past out and taking accountability. When we talk about resentments and when we talk about, having to make amends to people, I used to be like, I'm not making amends to that person because they don't deserve it. But who am I to say they don't deserve it? Did I do something wrong in this situation? Yeah, cool. Then they deserve it, right? It's not about me. It's about, you know, cleaning that part of my street so that these other people that I have harmed, um, can have some healing too, right? To let them know, hey, I'm not that same person. And I genuinely feel bad for the things that I did, in my addiction because that was not me. I was not connected to anything higher than myself. I was just me. And I was as far down as, I could have been, And so I feel like I feel blessed in the ability to now be in my fourth step and I'm just owning everything and once I get to my fifth step, which will probably be in the next month here, um that's going to be even more freeing. Like all of the rest of that stuff that I didn't get to do in my first set, I can just like let it go with certainty this time because I know now what I'm giving it to, and I can free myself from these things so that I can better walk in a good way, right? Like, yeah.
So when you were talking, you had talked about hate, that you were very hateful and angry, and you wouldn't look or talk to anybody, and
Hmm.
and the word hate, right? That's a strong word.
It is, yeah.
Um, do you remember while you were like in those stages? Because like I can relate, like because I was so angry and violent, and but then there was moments where I was like, I'll give you an example. So
Hmm.
like when I would beat somebody up or have to beat somebody up or be expected to fight, I would sit quietly and I was like, I don't really want to do this. But then I had to live up to like the story that I told myself, that that's who I am and I have to do this. But then the other part of me was like, no, man, that's not, you're not really like that.
Right.
Did you ever have moments like that where you were like, well, I don't want to hate. I don't want to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely did, and I feel like when I say hate, it was like I didn't realize it at that time. It's like I hated myself. Like I was so ashamed of myself that I was projecting this like stay away from me vibe, right? Like because I've lived my life with having such barriers up and such because I had to protect myself. I feel like I had to grow up really quickly. And a lot of us have to. Like, we fall on, I can't speak for anybody else, but I speak for myself and I fall into addiction because, either I'm lacking something, I'm trying to get over something, or I'm searching for something. Like, it's just, I like a place of not belonging, right? And so, like, I had so much hatred towards myself and so much shame on myself that it was projecting anger on other people because I felt like I was protecting myself, right? And I wasn't doing anybody any good, right? Here's that cranky girl in the corner with her headphones on and just head down and I used to get really mad. I used to get really, really mad at the Our Father prayer that they spoke. And that we walk in, they're like, this is a spiritual program, and then we have to say this, and it's like this is the old ways, and I just like I still have some weirdness about it, even though who I am. I just it's still weird, but I feel like it can be pretty harsh and not unsettling for some people, and so I have my opinions on that, and so I remember being the only person that would sit down. And I'm just like, I'm not standing for this. I'm not doing, so again, and so now, out of respect for other people, I just stand. I don't say it. I don't have to say it, but I stand. And over time I've released, that anger and things like that. But
That's like I'm relating to everything,
yeah.
including the Our Father prayer. I
Mhm.
always wondered why the hell are they letting them say this prayer in this room when it's
Mhm.
a total Christian prayer, and it's like anyway. So I
Yeah.
had serious resentments against it, but I would stand up, but I wouldn't say anything. And I would
Mm.
try not to listen to that prayer. But now today I'm totally fine with all of that stuff. And when you said, you actually hated yourself, like, yeah, exactly. It's the same with me. And but you don't realize that until you start uncovering, what the issues are within yourself. And like the steps are so magnificent for that, right? They just start revealing things in a way that really humble you. And, you know, and I don't want to take anything away from our culture because I think it's amazing. But like I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people, and I've seen like all these different ways of getting sober. And the one thing that the 12 steps have that the culture doesn't. So back like before Christopher Columbus came, let's say, and we would do vision quests, we could go sit on the hill and talk to Creator, no food, no water from 4 to 7 days, whatever it was. And you could really see within yourself and set right what needed to be set right with Creator and probably come out of there with some real good answers. But my opinion is with the 500 years of, systematic abuse and the things that have happened, and we've really blocked ourselves off, and then a lot of belief systems and all these things, it's very difficult in 2025 as a native person to go just sit by yourself and try to figure out what's going on and what's wrong with just you and Creator because there's so much there and the thickness of the concrete of the pain and the harm. It's it just doesn't allow for us to see that truth, right? So
Yeah.
what I love about the steps is that fourth and fifth step and the amends really allow for those layers to get peeled back, which is why I really think the 12 steps, at least from what I've seen, works well. And then people go to culture and then they do really, really well. It's not quite as often that they just go to culture and do super well, although I have seen it. Um, but that's the one big thing I think that the steps, or at least this way of uncovering things, works super well. And not only, on the vision quest, you got to do it by yourself. This way, we don't do it ourselves, and people help us see it, which is really important because we can't see the pain when we're living in the pain, or you can't see self from self. So I really
Yeah.
related to that. Um, Now that you're pursuing your culture,
Mhm.
what's that been like to have that transition and then to bring like, I remember when you messaged me back and you're like, well, I don't know if I would be a fit, not verbatim, because I have Christianity. And like
Mhm.
I said, dude, that doesn't matter. This is about your own journey and what works for you and how it is. And that's the truth, right? And I'm so grateful that you are here. But how has this transition been into the culture and what values do you see that it's really bringing? And is it connecting you to your core of who you are?
Yeah, I feel goodness, I feel like yeah, it's new for me, right? Like having gone through this journey and not really understanding like where I fit, being mixed and also, there's a lot of like lateral violence too, right? Being like lighter skinned and and then trying to I do like classes and stuff at like the Bobahan Hub. It's just like we do like Indigenous classes. People come and facilitate different things, and I've learned so many things like moccasins, dream catchers, medicine bags. I've made ribbon skirts and beadwork but I'm learning. I feel like a lot of like Blackfoot or Cree teachings out here, which I'm like embracing and I love it, and it's just beautiful, right? It's harder to reclaim and learn about my Salish side just because I'm so far, you know. Spasm is right by Hope. It's like by the Thompson River, right? It's pretty deep and far out there, and I'm connecting more and more with my family. Uh, some of my family still lives on the reservation there, and then I have family in Surrey. My cousins are own a law firm out there, and they're doing good things, but it is it is harder to reclaim, but I feel like I feel at peace when I feel like I can um like I don't know, it's like I feel at peace when I feel like I'm able to or I'm allowed to reclaim and I'm allowed um to embrace this part of me, right? Because I think a lot of the time when I first started, I was like, oh, maybe I'm not worth it. Maybe, I'm too light skinned to be Indigenous and so I felt like I was almost intruding even though I'm not, right? And so yeah, it's still a work in progress and I embrace the culture out here and I embrace the fact that I'm hoping to go this summer and meet more of my family and learn more and hopefully make my cedar hat and just learn and listen from the elders out there. We can learn from everyone. You know, doesn't matter where we're from or as long as I really love working with our older people and they have just so much lived experience and so much knowledge and so many things that they can give us, right? And yeah, I think I just feel blessed that I even have this opportunity in sobriety to learn these things and to grow as a person. Um, but yeah.
Amazing, amazing. So just a heads up to everybody, we're gonna go overtime just a little bit. But if anyone has any quick words or questions for Brittany, feel free to unmute and say what you gotta say. And then we'll move on to AJ to close us out today. Okay, Britt. Looks like that's it. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here, and we'll get the speaker switched out. And our next speaker
Beautiful. Thanks for having me.
is, thank you, Brett, is Mr. AJ Starlight. This guy is so full of life and energy and just a willingness to serve. He's also from Sutana, and he's he just lights up a room, man. Like he really lights up a room. He's a spearhead for our creator, working with the people. And this guy has his foot on the gas in service all the time. Not only that, he's a family man and takes pride in his own family. And I've seen him dancing at powwows, and he's just an all-around amazing human being. So I was pretty grateful when he said yes, and there was no hesitation. He was like, "Yes, I'll do it for sure." So anyway, without any further ado, thank you, AJ, for joining us and take it away, brother.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure how to work this thing. But yeah, hello everyone. My name's AJ Starlight. I grew up in Small Boys Camp, Alberta. I lived there till I was about 13 years old. Uh, yeah, just kind of coming on, doing a lot of reflecting about the upbringing. Uh, It's been quite a journey. I'll be 40 years old in September. So I was just actually looking back about everything I've been through, and it's been quite a journey. So yeah, I grew up in Small Base Camp. Um, just being a young kid out there, living there with my mom and my stepdad. I, just like any other kid, just doing whatever. It was really ceremonial. Like the Small Boys Camp growing up, I thought it was just a home, but Small Boys Camp was a place for culture, living traditional ways. They had no running water. The bathrooms were outhouses. They had to hunt to eat. Very rarely that they had to. They used generators, so we barely watched TV. But when we did, it was a VHS. So there was the yeah, it was pretty rough growing up and not knowing about my identity growing up. So my dad's from Sutina. My mom's from Muscocheese, Hobbema, Alberta. So I was living with my mom. My mom split with my dad, and we stayed in small boys camp. I didn't know I was Dene, but in small boys camp, everybody was from Muscocheese. They were Cree, so the lateral violence, the bullying, all that stuff, like lived towards it was towards my family. It was towards me growing up, and I didn't realize it. I just thought everyone was really mean, but there was that disconnection, Cree, Dene. It was really disturbing now that I look back at it. Like, yeah, I was a young kid. You wouldn't do that to young people. You'd want to include them, but there's a lot of discrimination, and just thinking back on it, I remember a story that I went to a ceremony, a sweat. I got yelled at for trying to go in the sweat and not go through the doors. So I didn't know anything about ceremonies. I was just a young kid, but I got yelled at and scolded pretty bad. So that's just like an example of the upbringing. There was a lot of yelling, anger towards me and my family. They Wintertime, we got a great big satellite Star Choice dish. Watch TV when the generator would be on, and people would walk by. They would throw snowballs at our satellite dish, almost breaking it. There was all these crazy things that happened to our family growing up. People would The generator would be on one night, be wintertime, -30. Kids would play around in the bush. Well, with the older kids, the teens, they would turn our generator off and on. So just to mess with our family. Like it was pretty bad, like the upbringing there. But the good thing that came a bit about it was looking back that everything was a lesson growing up. I had to go through that struggle. I had to learn those cultural values and teachings that it made me who I am today. Uh, so that's what I'm thankful for now. It's as much of a struggle as I'm glad I went through it. I wouldn't change it. And um, but yeah, when I was 12, I went through I had no choice. I had to go through a rites of passage ceremony, and I thought it was just a ceremony, but I had to work my butt off for a whole month. I woke up at 5 a.m. We stopped working at about 6 or 7 in the evening. So I was only 12 at the time. Doing this intense labor at 12 in small boys camp with my uncle Bob Smallboy. I didn't understand why I was working so hard. Um, Bob was a really understanding, strict old man. and he seen what my family was going through, and he was explaining that he had he went through very similar things, like with small boys camp and his family. There was family battles. There were like literal battles with one another, and it got so bad that they'd send someone to the hospital. Like they were fighting each other with um, like shovels, hitting each other on the head. Like it was so bad. But Bob told me that everything I needed to know in that time when my voice was changing, this is what you need to do in order to live and survive. So that whole month of work stuck with me for the rest of my life, that I didn't know that it was such an important period in my life, that that's why I work today. That month of work created work ethic as a man. But one thing I that wasn't there was the emotional support. We're just taught how to be a man. We're taught how to take care of a family, hunt, go get wood, get water. Like that's all it was. But the whole point behind that was that taught me how to survive, and like to this day. So I was that's when I was 12, and as time went on, my mom, her mom was a residential school survivor. I like cook 'em, and the whole, I would say, relationship there was bad. And I learned that my mom did exactly what her mom did to her to me and my siblings. So there was no emotional attachments. There was, but there wasn't. There was anger, everything that people look in like the books about residential schools nowadays. That's how we grew up. It was abuse. It was emotional abuse. There's addictions, and I believe everything that happened to me in my life, it ended up being because of my environment, and the actions that I took were just a result of my environments, and that's all I knew, and that's all my experience was. So that when I was 12, I moved to Hobima with my mom, and she just got separated with my stepdad at the time, and there was a whole bunch of abuse there with my mom and the stepdad, that my mom just started drinking, and she brought parties to the house where me and my siblings were. And thinking back on that, that's now that I have four kids, three older boys and a baby daughter, I would never do something like that just to save my kids. We're here to protect them and everything. But so when I was in Hobima, I was 11, I just turned 12, and I was in grade six. Her actions and with addictions led to people coming to the house. I remember locking the doors when people would come over to party. It was really, it was bad. I didn't know exactly what to make of it because it was all new. I was such a young kid, and oh man, that's when stuff started happening to me. I got into graffiti, do graffiti art through gang graffiti there. Um, I started dating. I was really young. You know, all this new stuff it was totally different from small boys camp. There's drugs, alcohol. The people that they're just totally different. So it was really big culture shock, and I knew I had to put on this fake character just to survive there. It was really like sad. All I was doing was acting like I was a gangster at a really young age. I was picking on people just because I seen other people picking on people. That was just a survival tactic to that I pretty much lived right in the ghetto in Ermineskin, and yeah, that's how it started. I met family I was related to. Um, you know, my mom's from there, so I got to know who my cousins were, and it later I found out that like Hobima was the worst place you could be, like for addictions, crime, um, gangs. They had so much issues due to residential schools that people were only trying to, do what they knew. That people got into rap or whatever, but I later found out that the only reason why these young people got into rap music was they were searching for their culture, having an identity, and they got made fun of by the older people and the elders, but no one was teaching kids how to um, let them know who they were, like with their culture. So with the artwork, I used to draw a lot, and the people I was hanging out with, I was at a house in Ermineskin Ghetto, and this young, well, he was 17 years old. I was 12, and he was tagging, and he was in a gang. He gave me a marker, and I tried to copy his gang tag, and that's how I got into graffiti. And he had spray cans too, and it was crazy at the time. So he went out. I wanted to go out with him. He let me know that we might get chased, and I was like, I'm fast, I don't care. And it was so exciting to do that I ended up that stuck with me to this day. I've been doing graffiti since I was 12, and I'm 40. I'm going to be 40 in September. But that when I discovered that art, it helped me out a lot with a healing aspect. So at the same time, my home life with my mom wasn't good, and it was pretty traumatic. Like the stuff we went through, me and my siblings, we were so small, and I didn't even know I was hanging out with drug dealers. I was tagging graffiti. I was doing all these things, but that's just the environment again. So on weekends or whenever it was, my mom would drink. She'd bring people to our house. I tagged up my own house, like just to do art and everything, and that it was so messed up living there. Like it was a regular thing, drinking, partying, people doing drugs that, oh man, this is where like the event happened that um this dude came into the house. He was drunk. He's my wife separated from my wife. My wife's talking about me. But um my mom was drinking, and she invited her ex-husband's brother to come over, and then he broke into the door in the big bedroom that I ended up getting sexually assaulted from this dude. Um, the good thing though was what I took away from it at the time was I saved my siblings. So about 2 years ago, I found out he passed. I was so mad, like I wanted to punch him out or something, and I had so much anger growing up, doing with addictions, drinking, doing drugs. Um, I was 2004, I met my one of my uncles from Hobima. He came to Hinton, Alberta. So that's where I was in high school. So I met Patrick in Hobima when I was a kid. He came to Hinton at firefighting. Really cool guy at the time. The reason why I bring up Patrick was because I really looked up to him. He had a wife, he had kids, he had a big house, he had a big truck. Like everything that I wanted to be pretty much. I had like this role model figure that I seen how much people respected him. Not knowing that eventually work with him. He brought me into firefighting. He took me into um, uh, the oil field. I worked on rigs for a period there and seismic. But not only that, like on days off, he really mentored me to be like this strong, like alpha male. But underneath that, everything that we were doing was it was all just a big act. Like I seen he was a big softie. His wife ran the house, and no one seen that side of him except I did. So the reason why I brought that up was everything that he went through. I literally went through it. I didn't even know at the time that um, he had a plan for me. So the reason why I say that was firefighting in the rigs or the oil field that uh, there was this intense male um, character you had to put on. Like it was just a big mask. So when I showed up, I was this new rookie. People try to mess with me. He's like, "You leave him alone. He's the sub leader or whatever." Everyone left me alone, but I ended up finding out that he was making me be his right hand man in like everything. The oil field and firefighting. That's all we did. I did it for 14 years. That it was a big routine. And later in life, I ended up finding out that I was just being used to get him rich. He was, I was making deliveries, selling drugs. He told me to go to a house to a guy that owed him money, and I took three guys to go to that house, and I was still thinking, like I said, I didn't, that was just a character that I thought I would have had to do something to get money from a guy, but when we showed up to a house that he just gave us the money. I was thankful that I didn't have to do nothing to that guy. And when I we did that a couple times that a mom and a kid would be in the house and I just imagine those kids seeing these big dudes I don't know, scaring them, pulling up in all these vehicles like that's like I said, I was looking back and thinking about stuff now that I'm gonna be 40 about how crazy and toxic like I was, and it really stems from this upbringing from residential school, intergenerational trauma, the life I had to live to act just to get by. It was mainly a survival tactic. Now that I look back at everything, and as in my adult life, struggling with addiction. So it was drinking. In the oil field, we did cocaine and the drug, the substance use and the mentality behind all of that was just a big fake character I had to put on to survive from these big macho dudes that it was just fake. That's all I see it as. And I knew that, but that was my environment and I had to adapt to it. And it was really, that's not who I was. And when people would go out and party or do drugs for days, I remember I was driving. I was that guy trying to like, I was coming away from that stuff and I got made fun of because I was trying to live a better life. And that moment in time when I was thinking about changing and not living like that anymore because it was killing me. I was suicidal and my mind shifted and I knew I wanted kids. Like that's when everything showed up. Like I pretty much manifested it in my brain that I didn't want to live like that anymore. And being from this angry person to this caring dad that I wanted to be, I needed something like in my life that gave me a purpose because I knew that that money wasn't doing anything for me. Like that I was in the oil field and firefighting. That's just like a breeding ground for like shit. It's nothing comes from that. Like just trauma and toxicity. And there's people that live like that to this day. I feel sad because that's an ongoing thing. That's what money does. But yeah, in 2009, I met my wife, and I was trying to figure things out. And the way I was brought up, I that's what happened to my wife. I ended up treating her pretty bad. Like I said, like the being toxic, not listening, being yelling, swearing. I got all that character from my upbringing, and it took a lot to change that. Um, yeah, my wife couldn't put up with me. She ended up leaving, and uh, I have two older kids, and we have two younger kids. I have a 14-year-old, 12-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and a 3-year-old. So when I look back now, um, geez, I put my wife through hell. Like I don't, the first half of our relationship because I didn't have my shit figured out. And the like when I said when I switched my mind to being healthier, not trying to be like this tough guy, you know, trying to impress people or whatever, because that's all it really was. That's that's what I feel that we do a lot today as we speak, like social media. We I don't know, it could be anything. That's all people do is like they try and impress. And if people were genuine, and I feel that it's a lot easier to do that. You it's a lot easier on yourself. And so when I moved out of Edmonton, so my wife and I came down. She went to SAIT. I still wasn't there for her. She went to school. I was helping watch my kids, and it was I was lost. Like I was lost in my mind for a real long time, and uh, I went to a ceremony, and like during the crisis when we did break up, and I was told that everything happens for a reason. And to this day now, I'm glad everything happened like the way it did because now things are better. Um, my wife's doing better in school. Oh man, she's doing really well. All I can do is be there for her. She's in education now. The women do so much, just like my mom did when we were in small boys camp. They did she did as best as she could to raise us, but then like all this shit happened. Um, it took me a while to figure that out. Like I was going through stuff in my mind that I I don't know, it came when it was supposed to. Like that's what I mean. Like the in our culture, that's our you're meant to see things when they're supposed to be there. So um there's so much going on through my mind right now, bro, that this I haven't spoke about this in a long time. But so just to let you know, like the 3 weeks ago, I went to three ceremonies and I took my son with me. What I said to the elder in the sweat was, I wish people could see what's going on out there, like the outreach, treatment, the detox runs. There's so much that goes on in addictions work. Like if people knew that the struggles that we had to go through, we would get more support. So when I was talking to him and when he prayed, he said, "Pray for AJ. He's seen so much. Like he has so much on his shoulders. Like let all that go. I didn't even think about that. Like me seeing so much over my lifetime that's all I was really trying to do is like to open people's eyes to that this is it's not going away. People need help with everything, everyday struggles. So when I heard you talking, Bill, about a break with work and all that stuff, it doesn't feel like work. That's why I keep doing it every day. That there's people out there that need that help, and quite rarely that there's people are there to help them out, like when they need it, like that immediate contact, that immediate detox, whatever's going on. Um, I always learned that when I grew up that work ethic gets you places, but it also helps you help people. And as much as you don't want to wake up to go to detox in the morning, you just want to have a good night's sleep. You could save someone's life doing that. That's what I think about. And a lot of people that I've known and grown up with, they they lost their lives. I would wake up early just to take someone to detox, like if they ask me to, that's if it's gonna help them, they're like who else is gonna do that? But anyways, the that being said, all this work ethic and sacrifice, learning, uh, even with my wife and my kids, I've learned that this whole journey, it's not for myself. The work isn't for me. It's not to get rich or anything like that. It's not about recognition or anything like that. Even so, the when I went to Pound Makers, um, just to go back here, that I wasn't meant to go down to that treatment center. I went to the doorway and I left. So in a way, I'm glad I did because I wasn't ready. And over the years, I had to go through that rough experience just to get where I'm at. Like if I wish I learned to listen when I was younger, but I have to go through that experience just to get where I'm at, and I wouldn't change anything, but just because what I get in return, I tell this to the people I work with that when I work, what I get in return is that I do get a paycheck, I pay my bills, that's about it. And at the end of the day, I have my wife's health, my four children's health, and my health. And I have an opportunity to wake up the next day to do that all over again. Um, So like everything that happened in my life, I think that it happened for a reason. And like I said before, that all that anger and there was so much anger, man. I barely swear, but back in the day, I was such an angry dude that I think I did like a 180. I don't even I have no resentments to anyone, like anywhere, no matter what's happened. I know they went through some stuff, and yeah, that's how I approach life every day. And when I see people succeeding, like hearing the other people's stories here today, that it was really cool to hear. I'm thankful for those stories because seeing so much addiction out there that it breaks my heart. That's why I do go to work every day. And man, when there's success stories that um it makes you want to keep going, that's how I feel. And so right now, things are going good. Like they have never been better. Despite the upbringing and all the issues, whatever's going on, everything's good, and I'm so thankful for that. That I work at the best place, not because of like the work itself, but the people there. Everybody's so similar with how they are to live the experience that I think that brings us together. And we joke, we laugh, we get things done. I could never, even with my wife, I couldn't do this work without my wife. Um, she's in school, she sews ribbon skirts, she takes care of her kids. She took my two little ones to her birthday today, and she does all this stuff, and she always supported me, like through this whole crazy process. Sometimes I think I'm like, if that was any other girl, she'd probably leave me. The shit I did, like that's so crazy. And then I went to a Brave Dogs meeting, and I spoke about that a bit. I go to a lot of ceremonies now, and I try to make sense of the life I went through. And man, when you talk to elders, they don't know the whole story, but when you tell them what's bugging you or what this means this or this means that, they have a good reason to tell you and to make you understand why. And so I was talking about my journey, and he goes, "Your wife didn't leave you because she's cultural. She knows the importance of a family, and that that was really like I almost started crying. Then I was like, I wasn't even like that at the time too. I was so pissed off that I ended up following her, and she grounded me so much that now I'm able to do this work and just live live life with her kids and with her. So I bring her up all the time just because that's how she's been for me and supporting me. And I don't know, man. Like I just find out that I think I'm lucky, dude. That's just how I feel. It was a lot of work, but at the same time, there was luck there. There was ceremony, there's prayers, and that's why I go to work every day. That's why I try to do as much as I can to help others. Is not a lot of people have what I have, and I have a vehicle, I have a house. My kids are all healthy. Um, people are searching for what I have, and when I bring people to my house that I'm working with, they're like, I love your yard. Like your truck." I'm like, "You could have it too, man. We just got to put in that work. We just you got to work on yourself so much that s- things come to you, and that's all you could do in order to work and be healthy." But yeah, the ceremony I went to, bro, it's been 3 weeks. I'm like, I wish people could see what I've seen, and now I'm doing this thing here. That's kind of cool.
Well, brother, I thank you. There's one thing that you have that I know that most people don't want is that hat. But we can't win them all. No, bro, I want to thank you. Like, bro, I learned so much about you today, and I had no idea the life that you lived, and like because I see you recovered, I don't know the other side. I haven't sat with you enough, and it's almost like to the point like you're such a good man and you're so happy that so it was like fuck, probably nothing even happened to AJ. He's so perfect. But it's kind of like on the flip side, when you do the work, life gets so good. It's like it's kind of a mere reflection of how bad it can be and then how good it can be, right? That's recovery in a nutshell. And yeah, I'm so grateful that I do know you, and I'm grateful that you came and shared your story. Does anyone have any questions or comments? We do got to wrap this up pretty quick here. I'm probably close to a half an hour overtime today, but we are on Indian time, which doesn't mean we're late. It means that healing takes what it takes. That's what Indian time means, is ceremony takes what it takes. And today was very similar to ceremony. And so, Taylor, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to first of all thank you for your level of vulnerability, right? It's not common to see that in Native men. So I wanna commend you for that. And it's really inspirational. I hope that other men see you and see the journey that you've been on and follow in those footsteps, right? Because like our men need healing, right? And they need that safe space to be vulnerable. Um, I I personally love your hat. Go Oilers. Hello. Um, but yeah, no, man, just I I'm glad that I got to hear that today and keep doing what you're doing. It's working and I hope that you continue to touch a lot of lives with your story.
Okay, thank you.
I would echo the same thing about not many men would actually come.
You muted,
Oh, there
Claudia.
you go.
Am I still muted? Oh, okay. Hi. Yeah. So yeah, I'd echo the same thing. I don't ever choose, like, just think about just reflecting on my own life and over time. Never hear men, Indigenous men, come forward and talk about their journey and all the vulnerable things that you shared here in this past 20 minutes, 25 minutes, whatever. Just, it's incredible. And just like the story is really heartbreaking, really. But the thing is, what I see shine through is your courage and to continue on and grab all the pieces and put it all together for yourself and your family. You and stand up as a strong Indigenous man. Incredible. Wow. Thank you for sharing. Merci.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, bro, that was. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Faith.
Hi there. If anybody wanted to hear the wife perspective, just joking. I just wanted to say, like, I appreciated hearing everybody's stories today, and I don't think I sit in this space enough. I just hear a lot of similarities and a lot of things that shared experiences, and it's really comforting to know that, like, you're not alone. We've all experienced kind of the same things, but might be in different capacities. And I don't know, I think one of the things that has just worked for like me and AJ's family is just having come from those same experiences. Both my parents were addicts. My mom passed away in I don't even remember what year it was. I think 2018. She was intoxicated and she got hit by a train at Wadman Lake. And for a big period of my life, like I mourned my mom before she passed because I didn't know where she was or what she was doing. I grew up a lot with my grandma. I was in and out of care. I was disconnected from my culture and just what kind of I think Danielle was talking about earlier, just feeling that disconnect and yeah, just being from everywhere but nowhere at the same time, and just growing those feelings of anxiousness and anxiety because of it. And my dad is still around, but he's still up to the same, activities and, not really growing up with anybody to kind of tell you what not to do. You grow up really fast and do a lot of things that you're not supposed to do at a really young age. And you're exposed to a lot of things that you shouldn't be at a really young age because of those house parties and being left to your own devices or being left all over the place with whoever. And when me and AJ met, and it's just funny to hear him say that I ground him, he literally grounded me. Like if we didn't have our first son, like I say when we had kids, like it literally saved my life because I don't know where I would have been. I was, I was 18, 19 at the time, drinking a lot, getting into drugs, blacking out, ending up at places I didn't even know where I was. I could have ended up dead. I didn't have shoes, nothing. And really just having kids really just was a huge reality check. And I don't know where my life would have went, my life path, if I didn't meet AJ. And AJ really grounded me. And he was very firm in, his boundaries of having no alcohol or drugs in and around our home, not having anyone intoxicated at our home with our children. So, that really grounded our family, and that's the path that we step forward into and still continue to this day with our own children. And just really grateful that our children never have to be exposed to anything like that. And they never even want to leave home. They want to stay home all the time, all weekend. They don't hang out with their friends. They don't go anywhere. I'm like, when I was your age, I was running around all over with my friends. Like, don't you guys want to leave and do something? But, I just see it as a blessing that they want to be home and be around us all the time. And every day, like, I feel like we live a good life because today we live a good life is because we choose our children every day. It's been a series of good choices every single day for the goodness of our children. And that everything has amounted into where it is now because of our children. And I think that's where we have like this common thread of like what really binds me and AJ together. And, of course we love each other. And, every day when I look at AJ, like, no matter how mad I am or whatever, like, I just feel like I just love him so much. And like, that's how I know he's my soulmate. But thank you anyways for letting me share and be a little vulnerable here.
Thanks, love you.
Love you.
Aw, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Faye. Okay, kids, we're gonna wrap her up. Claudia, any final words before I pray us out?
No, this is an incredible session today. Like, just for the record, I just want to say I think this is our fourth session. January, February, March, April, 5th, actually. I think 5th. And each and every time I'm learning something new. And I just want to say a special thank you to Rae-Dawn Taylor, Brittany, and AJ, and of course, Billward. So I'm from Fort McMurray, everyone, and I've just been working with Bill since we started this back in December, and it was to try to reach more people and giving them the support they need from wherever they are. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody for your stories and what a vulnerable place it is to come and share, the deepest part of yourself out here. Just means so much. Thank you.
Beautiful. Okay, kids, next one's going to be May 31st. Um, I'm doing a lot of work with Sutina, so I'm going to pass on the info to Sutina, and maybe they can share it with a lot of the clients that we work with, and we'll try to really push this out a little bit more over the next coming months. And Claudia, I'll get you back the email with some paperwork that you need. And but thank you for today, everyone. I'm going to pray us out, and then we'll shut her down. Ai, Victimagino, creation. Thank you. Please hear our prayers. Thank you so much today, Creator, for joining us for this health and healing. The people were speaking vulnerable today and getting it out and allowing you to enter to do what you do, Creator. I ask, Creator, that you take us from here in a good way, allow us to go home and keep us safe, allow us to keep on our healing journey. Be with us, Creator, on our shoulder, guiding us, showing us, pushing us, allow us to learn our lessons, to receive our blessings, and to do the things and the work we do in a good way. I thank you for all the participants and the people, Acfn, Claudia, who put this on for the betterment of their people and all people. I thank you, Creator, for my life today, the gift of life that I didn't always respect and honor, which I do today. There's only one life, Creator. That's the life you give all of us. Thank you. Hi, hi.
Thank you. Hi, hi. Have a good